Chapter 436, Pushing Past the Limits. He gritted his teeth, unable to fight back. Zara gave him no space, and her spear stabbed towards his throat. He blocked her with his sword. Blood started to fall from his eyes. The void corrupted his body. His skin was torn apart, and his bones started to grow in haphazard shapes. Neo's body was becoming an abomination. The void seeped deeper and corrupted his soul. It started to grow like a tumor. Zara kept attacking Neo with her spear. He had to keep blocking her while using his concepts to slow down his body's decay. Her spear slashed out in a large arc and took out his arm. Instantly, the void elementals drilled into the injury, not even allowing him a moment of respite. His healing and blessings could not keep up with the void dragon god. It's not working. I can't defeat her like this. Neo stopped thinking about why Zara was putting him through such training. He swung his sword mindlessly without a break. The more he fought, the angrier he felt. Why was he being pushed back like this? Because he was weak. That did not, and should not, matter. He was a heavenbreaker. A being comparable to a world. Why could a measly god push him to the brink of defeat? Neo tightened his grip around the sword's hilt and attacked without holding back. His techniques, his elemental masteries. Everything he learned was the path other awakeners took to become gods. A god was nothing but an inferior copy of a world. Why was Neo following their path? He was better than them. This path was inferior for him. Neo retracted his elementals and cancelled his true domains. With nothing protecting him, the power of void corrupting him increased several folds. His skin fell off like it was being peeled. Deformed arms and mouths appeared over his back and other body parts. Neo ignored the increasing corruption. White wisps of energy materialized around him. He was a heavenbreaker. A being comparable to a world. And that's how he should fight. His mind started to produce so much energy that space distorted around him. His soul and body ruptured. Neo condensed it. He took that unfathomable energy to create sword intent. It was the only technique he knew that didn't belong to awakeners or gods. A technique that came from intent. White arcs of energy shot out of his blade. They did nothing to Zara's void elementals. But Neo didn't stop. He condensed more energy and attacked. When the attack failed, he condensed more energy and attacked. When it failed again, he condensed more energy and attacked. His body and soul creaked, unable to handle the pressure building within his body. However, Neo ignored all that. He focused on the arcs of light flying out of his sword. What was his sword missing? Why couldn't it cut the enemy in front of him? That was when Neo realized it. He could cut the void elementals. But it didn't matter as they weren't killed. Two elementals, being cut apart did nothing. I need to kill them. Neo's body moved instinctively as he slashed. Kill. Cut. A sword slashed. The slash cut. A weapon that could do as such was a sword. Was a knife a sword? It could cut an apple. Yes, it was a sword. But it was not Neo's sword. For Neo, a sword was not something that stopped at cutting its enemy apart. It cut the enemies to kill them. Slash. Cut. Kill. Neo felt he was becoming closer to understanding the true sword. What was a sword? A weapon that cut its enemy. What was the sword's job? To kill the enemy. Cutting the enemy was a step taken on the path of what made a sword. First, a slash. Then, they could be cut. And death would claim them. The white flames covering Neo's sword began turning black. Alarms rang in Zara's mind, and she hurriedly took a step back. But it was too late. Neo slashed. The black arc of energy cut apart the void elementals. They couldn't ignore the attack like before and began to disintegrate. The black arc of energy continued moving forward and slashed the void sanctuary in half. Void elementals disappeared from the surroundings. Zara and Neo returned to Tartarus. She remained frozen. While she did push Neo, hoping to force an enlightenment out of him, she never expected him to create a technique that could destroy her sanctuary. Even if I'm weakened and I only used a sanctuary instead of my world, I'm still a stage 3 god, and he destroyed my sanctuary with a single slash. Neo, now an abhorrent mass of flesh, crashed against the ground. Pain clouded his mind. His body and soul had been deformed so much that he could barely use intent vision and hold a sword. He had to heal himself. But holy in life couldn't simply heal a corrupted body. He had to remove the corruption as if it was a tumor. He used darkness to devour himself. Incomprehensible screams almost left his mouth. He forced himself to remain quiet. He could vaguely feel like Zara was telling him to use a less painful method, and Elizabeth was looking on with worry. But without ears and eyes, and in too much pain to use intent senses, Neo couldn't be sure he was right. He continued. There was no time to dawdle around. This was the fastest method. The darkness ate his body and soul, tearing it apart. He regenerated everything piece by piece. When Neo regained his consciousness, he was lying on a bed. Elizabeth sat on the chair near him and held his hand. Zara was standing near the door with a guilty expression. You are awake. A sense of relief appeared on Zara's face when she saw him move. She almost hugged him until she noticed Elizabeth's glare. Don't touch him. He is in a state like this because of you. I was just trying to push him beyond his limits. Zara knew she had been wrong. She had banked on Tartarus's immortality and attacked without holding back, as nothing could have killed Neo. In retrospect, that was a poor decision. Void could cripple him. Then, it wouldn't matter even if he revived. I'm sorry, Zara said honestly. It's fine, Neo said. That actually helped me learn something good. Zara realized he was talking about the black energy that covered his sword and cut her sanctuary. What was that? She questioned. I've never seen anything like that. Neo hesitated. He had created the technique after building upon his understanding of the sword. What would be its name? Somehow, a name appeared in Neo's mind. Death Sword. Something nagged in his mind that it was Death Sword intent, not Death Sword. Still, Neo remained silent. It would be too awkward if he were to correct the technique's name after creating it. Death Sword. So that's the technique name, Zara muttered to herself. After knowing he was safe, Zara left. Elizabeth followed behind her. Left alone, Neo opened his status. Modification. Have a sword intent strong enough to cut a stage 2 world completed. A slot has been freed. A faint smile appeared on his face. The notification that had appeared during the battle confirmed his guess. Death Sword is the next stage of sword intent. Or should I say, it's sword intent LV. 2. Again, the nagging feeling within his mind returned. Neo scratched his head. Schizophrenia. That's not right. He wasn't insane. But then why was he having such a nagging feeling? If elementals were here, Neo could have chalked up the nagging feeling to elementals speaking directly in his mind. But they were not here. Right. Unlike normal places where elementals come into the world from the elemental dimensions, this place is filled with Tartarus world's energy and the elementals Tartarus creates itself. It's normal for the elementals here to not listen to me or reply since they belong to Tartarus. Then, where is the nagging feeling coming from? A few days later, Zara recovered to an acceptable level, Elizabeth had stabilized her internal energies, and Neo was back to full health. The trio decided to set out. Where are we going? Neo questioned. To that giant tree, Zara replied. If I'm being honest, that is the only place where the Tartarus core can be. We have to capture it if we want to save the grand expedition and complete our mission. So we are doing this alone. Quote ellipsis question mark quote. I mean, we aren't going to rescue those people up there to increase our numbers. Honestly, going against Tartarus with this number might prove to be difficult, Neo said. That's the plan for now. Besides, rescuing even one person from up there isn't easy. We can only search for the core and try to subdue it directly. Neo wanted to say how they could defeat the core if they couldn't defeat the vines. But he kept his mouth shut. Just then, Zara added seriously, we will search for Ava while moving towards the tree. Ava was a part of the grand expedition. No, she sneaked in, Zara answered. I can sense she is somewhere here, but I can't detect her location since that's beyond the scope of my abilities. Elizabeth stood quietly on the side. During the past days, Neo had told her everything that was happening. It didn't change the fact that she had not met any inhabitant of Tartarus other than Zara, nor did she know what kind of person Ava was to add her opinion on the topic. I might have a way to solve that problem. I have a blessing that can tell me the destination of anything I want, Neo said. That's Artemis' blessing. Yes. Zara sighed in relief. Please, use it. We need to search for Ava as soon as possible. Chapter 437 Rulebreaker Witches, Searching for Ava. Please, use it. We need to search for Ava as soon as possible. Quote ellipsis question mark quote. Neo frowned. Why are you in a hurry? It's not like we can rescue her from the nightmares. We need to do that. Zara noticed Neo and Elizabeth's confused expressions. Cain would be entering the abyss of nightmares soon. We need to find Ava before that. Honestly, I would have preferred to send Ava back so that Cain doesn't enter the abyss, but I don't think we can do that. Why didn't the Sword Saint enter with the grand expedition? Elizabeth suddenly spoke. He sounds strong. It should be good news for you if he comes to the abyss of nightmares. Zara alternated her gaze between Neo and Elizabeth. I guess he didn't tell you why he is called the Great Disaster. What do you mean? Kane was part of the 8th Grand Expedition. That expedition was guaranteed to succeed until Kane slaughtered everyone and came back with only a few survivors. What? Neo frowned. Kane wouldn't kill people without reason. I'm not sure about that, Zara said. His title of Great Disaster is given to him by the survivors of the 8th Grand Expedition. Why did he do that? He refuses to answer. Our best guess is that he was under the influence of darkness. It helps that after returning, he sealed his trait and ability to wield a sword. If not for it, the dragon clans would have no choice but to band together to subjugate him. Zara explained in more detail. After Kane sealed his trait, he was still quite strong. Eliminating him would take a lot of resources. Moreover, it wasn't the first time someone went berserk under the influence of darkness. Thus, the dragon clans didn't start a crusade against him for eliminating the 8th Grand Expedition. It did, however, ostracize him in Tartarus, which was the reason he lived near the edges of the land instead of living inland in settlements. Since we still don't know what caused Kane to lose his reason last time, nobody wants him to enter the abyss of nightmares, not with the Grand Expedition. Neo's frown didn't ease. Something didn't add up. If Kane lost his control to darkness, why was he fine now? It was rare to recover from darkness and sanity. Chances were Kane never lost control to darkness and did everything by himself. But why? Is he trying to protect Tartarus? But then why did he let us enter the abyss of nightmares? Neo froze. There could be only one reason if Kane was protecting Tartarus and still let them enter the abyss of nightmares. He is confident we cannot defeat Tartarus. Neo erased such thoughts. Kane wouldn't let millions of people enter the abyss of nightmares and die for no reason. The Kane he knew was not such a person. We should move, Elizabeth said, snapping Neo out of his thoughts. He nodded and used his blessing. A silvery trail of light appeared. The blessing works here, he said, causing Zara to sigh in relief again. Neo noticed the trail was moving in the direction of the tree. It was good news as they wouldn't need to take detours. The trio moved at high speed. Often, Zara would return to her true dragon form and carry them. She wasn't capable of remaining in her true form for long periods of time due to her injuries. And although a smaller body was weaker, it consumed fewer resources, and currently, resources were their biggest worry as they had no idea how long they would remain in Tartarus. Neo kept condensing his essence. He regularly gave his world energy to Zara. She asked for that as a price in return for training Neo and Elizabeth in Void Element. Honestly, Elizabeth made Neo question a lot of things. The Everwitch Violet allowed her to gain death, darkness, time, holy, life, and void. She already had light, so 6 new elements. Bloody hell, what kind of treasure was that flower? The Sphinx gave it to me like a lollipop. Did it not show the flower could give affinities? Neo knew no one was supposed to gain any more affinities than they already had. But witches clearly didn't follow normal rules. They could revive after having their seed of existence destroyed, and compared to it, gaining affinities was more believable. After all, Neo could do the same with true darkness. Not that he had gained any affinity with true darkness yet, he might or might not be starting to hate luck-based events. Elizabeth pushed the masteries of her new elements to adept, with darkness, holy, and life almost on the cusp of reaching expert mastery. Neo noticed quite a lot of interesting things on their way to Ava. Elizabeth was competitive. She was hell-bent on raising her void affinity mastery, probably to surpass Zara. She was surprisingly clumsy too. Her clothes got torn quite a lot of times during training, and Neo had to create more for her. Zara liked to tease her a lot. The creator of the goddess of love had no qualms about getting touchy with Neo while training. In her words, she did it to motivate Elizabeth. Whenever that happened, Neo would get a cold shoulder from Elizabeth for a week. He really wanted to cry. How was that his fault? Zara would beat him so much that he couldn't move before getting touchy. He couldn't stop her even if he wanted to. The trio took over a year to reach Ava's location. The base of the giant tree was only a few days from their current location. Do we need to rescue her? Elizabeth asked. We need to. It wouldn't be good if Kane comes here and sees his daughter dangling in the sky with her head connected to a vine from the giant tree, Zara answered. Why did she even come here? Elizabeth questioned. You should hear that from Ava herself, Zara answered and began transforming into her true form. She grew thousands of miles big. Wings made of deformed flesh appeared over her back. Purple veins and mangled limbs made the surface of her dragon form's skin. C438 time skip. Cover me. With a roar, she took to the sky. Thousands of vines shot downward. Neo activated his null hour true domain. He decreased the number of vines by 20%, and Beelzebub slowed the rest by eating their time. It gave Zara enough time to reach Ava when suddenly a giant arrow made from vines shot through the skies and pierced her brain. Before more attacks came and Zara died, Elizabeth used her concept of time to turn back time by 10 seconds. Arrow from the sky. It is aimed at your head, she said. Her voice was low, but Zara could hear it clearly thanks to her high senses. The dragon god twisted her neck to dodge the arrow and grabbed Ava. Countless more arrows fell from the sky. Neo erased the ones aimed at Zara's vital organs. Elizabeth had just turned back time and couldn't do it again so quickly. Zara had to brace for the impact. She shielded herself and Ava, but quite a few arrows pierced her body. She descended into the ground. Her injuries were light compared to the time she rescued Elizabeth. Thank you for helping me, Zara said. Elizabeth and Neo nodded. Zara transformed back into her human form and pulled out a house from her shadow space. They entered the house before laying the unconscious Ava on the bed. Looks like she will take time to wake up, Zara said, noticing her condition. True to her words, Ava woke up after an hour. Where am I? Ava almost shrieked and jumped out of the bed when she saw Zara's smiling face. Ava, why did you sneak in here? I can explain it, Aunt. She ran and hid behind Elizabeth, using her to shield herself from Zara. Why are you hiding, Ava? Talk with me face to face. Isn't that what an adult is supposed to do? Help me, Ava whispered to Neo. She was on the verge of tears after she saw Zara. Why are you afraid? You were bound to meet her when you decided to sneak into the abyss. I thought I would meet Uncle Vlad instead of her, she answered meekly. Neo had a strange expression, hearing her answer. Ava normally remained expressionless. For her to be so afraid of Zara, what had the Void Dragon done to her? You were related to her niece? Elizabeth asked. No. We are both dragons. That's why I called her aunt, Ava answered, only now noticing Elizabeth's face. Julie de Beaufort. She turned her head to Zara. Where did you find her, aunt? You know my sister. Elizabeth asked her before she could complete her sentence. Neo and Zara exchanged glances. Neo had told Zara that Elizabeth was Julie's twin sister, and she didn't know Julie was here. They hadn't told Elizabeth about Julie yet and were waiting for a chance to break the news to her. I should have known this would have happened, Neo thought. Sister. Aren't you Julie? Ava said. Almost everyone in the upper ranks of dragon clans knows how you look. You were the one who escaped Tartarus a few years ago and came back. Elizabeth blinked. She took time to process the information. My sister is here. Why are you talking like Ava? Neo interrupted her. Julie was from our world, and she had a twin sister who looked exactly like her. Oh. After the brief introduction and the terrible first impression, Ava was taken away by Zara. Neo and Elizabeth were left alone in the room. My sister is here, Elizabeth mumbled and sat on the bed. Her eyes were unfocused as if she was recalling her memories. She had always wanted to know where Julie had gone and why. But to think she was in Tartarus. Elizabeth had a hard time wrapping her mind around it. Can you use your blessing to find Julie, Neo? If everyone in Tartarus is searching for her and hasn't found her, then she has to be inside the abyss, among these people caught in the nightmare. I tried it already. The blessing doesn't show her location. Elizabeth massaged her brows. Is she really here? Yes. Neo was sure of it. Zara had come to Tartarus in search of Julie. The Void Dragon confirmed the news. She seemed to have some history with Julie. When Neo asked her about it, she had diverted the topic. Let's move, Elizabeth said, a lot more motivated than before. Tartarus definitely knows where she is. We need to meet the World Core. Neo and Elizabeth waited for Ava and Zara in the waiting room. The two dragons came after a few hours. Ava's clothes were different, and she seemed to have healed, probably thanks to her natural regeneration. Were you? Neo began but decided to give them the benefit of the doubt. I was testing her to make sure she is good enough to come here, Zara said. It's one thing to sneak in with the Grand Expedition, but it's another thing when you do it while being weak. We can't be expected to be her caretaker. In other words, Ava had received a good old beating. Neo was starting to suspect Zara got off from abusing others. She was harsh on him and Elizabeth during training and used the first chance she got to beat Ava. Dear, are you thinking something rude? Zara asked. I was just thinking we should go towards the tree tomorrow and take a rest today, Neo lied with a straight face. That's a good suggestion. We don't know what we will encounter when we reach the tree's base. It's best if we rest and recover to our top condition before going there, Zara nodded. The injuries she got while rescuing Ava could be healed within a few days. They decided to rest until then. A year had already passed since they arrived in the abyss. Taking a few more days to reach the tree was better than rushing at it unprepared. They had no idea what they would find there. C439 worries for the future. I still don't know why Kane didn't come here yet. Did he enter this place and get caught by the nightmare tree, or does time flow here faster than outside, and not much time has passed in the outside world? While deep in thought, Neo's hand moved with practiced ease, and he cooked food. Zara and Elizabeth both liked his cooking. He was happy to cook for them. In the abyss, they could only train or move towards the tree. The same sight every day put a great burden on their minds. Neo's cooking was one of the few things that lifted their mood in the bleak environment. What are you thinking about? Elizabeth asked, approaching him while he was deep in thought. I was wondering why the Sword Saint hasn't come here. A year has gone by, but there is no news of him. Maybe he was caught in the nightmare tree. Elizabeth asked. As the duo spoke, she grabbed some vegetables and started cleaning them. She had been completely clueless about cooking a year ago, but after watching Neo cook and learning from him, she had gained impressive skills. I doubt that. The Sword Saint seems to be comparable to or stronger than Dragon Clan leaders. Zara is a Dragon Clan leader and couldn't be caught by the nightmare tree. I think the Sword Saint shouldn't be caught either, he said. But other Dragon Clan leaders are still in Nightmare. No. You need to understand Zara is exceptionally strong for a Dragon Clan leader. She came to Tartarus and seized the position with pure strength. I suppose you are right. The corner of Neo's lips rose ever so lightly. Elizabeth always gave good advice and helped him clear his mind. She spoke again, though I think the time outside the abyss and inside flows differently. A year has passed for us, but for others who are outside along with the Sword Saint, only a few days might have passed, and the Sword Saint has yet to enter the abyss. Neo frowned when he heard her. Why do you look worried? She asked. Temporal difference between the outside and the inside, Neo explained. Doing that would cause a huge amount of time elementals to move around. I can't sense anything like that with my time affinity. There were two possibilities for such a scenario. Both were spine-chilling. While Neo stayed silent, Elizabeth decided to give words to his thoughts. After all, talking to other about your worries could ease your mind. The first possibility is that Tartarus is a stage 4 world, not stage 3 like everyone believes. As it's far stronger than us, it makes sense we can't detect it using its time powers. The second possibility is that Tartarus is a stage 3 world, and it's not using time elementals to make time flow faster. But that doesn't explain why the Sword Saint hasn't come inside yet, Neo completed Elizabeth's sentence. The unknown had been giving him a headache. If Tartarus was a stage 4 world, then they might really have no hope of defeating it. Fortunately, such scenario would likely not come true. If Tartarus was stage 4, at least one inhabitant should have gone beyond fabled rank and reached the next rank. But that never happened. Fabled rank was the limit for the inhabitants of Tartarus. What the fuck is causing the time difference if Tartarus is not using time elementals? Neo felt he was overlooking something. Or maybe Tartarus has a way to stop others from ranking up. This might be a game over if it's really a stage 4 world. It's okay. We can think it through. Don't worry too much about it, Elizabeth said to him as she stood beside him, chopping the vegetables. A spicy aroma filled the house after the food was cooked. Ava and Zara came to the living room and sat at the dining table. Ava gulped, smelling the aroma. Neo chuckled when he saw her like that. Ava's true personality was quite different from what she showed when they first met. He supposed she was acting mature as Neo and others were her father's guests. But now that she had become familiar with them, she dropped all pretense. It's delicious, Ava muttered, taking a scoop. It's at the level that only the royal cooks of the Blood Dragon clan can cook. Neo smiled faintly, listening to her praises. After lunch, Neo left the house to train. During the past year, he had made tremendous leap in strength. Both of his traits had reached 100% progress. Crownless King's experience points increased as Elizabeth grew stronger. Empathic transcendence was harder to train. He couldn't talk with elementals. It was only when Elizabeth gave him a clue that he could train it. Empathic transcendence helped him converse with everyone. Simply put, he could talk with Zara, Obidus, Beelzebub, and Elizabeth with the skill. After a year of relentless training, his progress had reached its peak. Neo could finally make a breakthrough to grade 1 paragon in both traits. But that was not all. His biggest achievement was something else. He checked his status with a look of appreciation. Obidus. Type. Sacred treasure, incomplete. Essence. 1000. He could finally make Obidus a complete sacred treasure. Coupled with the primordial world core condensation technique, he could create a world core and break through to the first step Heavenbreaker rank. I hope I can get a qualitative gain in strength after creating my world core and reaching first step Heavenbreaker rank. Just a simple boost in rank won't be enough to defeat Tartarus. Neo entered his shadow space. The others had asked if he needed help, but he had refused, saying he wanted to do the breakthrough alone. He walked over the barren land and sat cross-legged on the ground. This piece of broken mountain was the only land left inside his shadow space after he had thrown the destroyed earth at Baal, and Baal wiped it out with a snap. The first-ranked Grim Reaper had been impossibly strong. If I could open a portal to the underworld, then conquering Tartarus would have been easier than stealing a lollipop from a kid. Unfortunately, they had found no way to escape the abyss, let alone Tartarus. Zara had told him that Ava was quite knowledgeable, and she might be able to find a way out of the abyss given time. But Neo was not placing much hope on it. Author's note. The second chapter of the day will be a bit late. C440 Formless Sword. He shook his head and erased the useless thoughts. For now, he had to focus on the task at hand. His energy started to surge like a tsunami. It grew larger, denser, and stronger. Neo kept the energy from leaking and forced it to stay within his body. The energy rampaged inside him with nowhere to go. However, Neo controlled it and used the energy to enhance his body and soul. His bones became more robust, and his skin became fairer. His energy reached the tipping point where it suddenly burst forth like an avalanche. Shockwaves erupted from Neo, causing the world around him to shake. Empathic Transcendence, Grade 2 Right Pointing Arrow Grade 1. Crownless King, Grade 2 Right Pointing Arrow Grade 1. Neo could sense the tremendous changes in his body. But he didn't stop and get up to confirm them. He kept his eyes closed and started to call out to the energy stored within Obidus. His world energy resonated within the essence stored inside the sword. It floated before him. As Neo condensed the essence within it, white cracks started to appear on the sword. The cracks grew denser with time. Finally, there was no more space for the cracks, and the sword shattered. The leftover energy created shockwaves that were far stronger than his breakthrough before. Neo used his intent senses to see what had changed in Obidus, and what? Obidus no longer had a physical body. No, to be exact, the sword had transcended beyond the needs of a physical body. There was nothing before Neo. And yet, he could tell that something was there. It wasn't visible, but he could feel it. He stretched his hands and grabbed the hilt around the emptiness. Obidus. Hilt fit snugly within his hand. A sword that has no physical body. Neo had read about such a sword when he was inside the Shadow Trial. It was the sword that Uranus, the leader of the Awakener organization, and the first S-rank Awakener, was trying to make. Unfortunately, all his attempts resulted in failure. The S-rank Awakener died before he could get any useful result. A formless sword. Neo slashed. The sword's blade extended beyond his shadow space and gouged out a deep chasm in the abyss outside the shadow space. A sword that is no longer restrained by physical laws. It can attack anything within the range of my senses. Neo smiled faintly. The formless sword's nature allowed it to make use of dimensional shift, which helped it to transcend space and dimensions. You've grown stronger. Responding to his thoughts, a faint figure of a woman appeared before him. She had long black hair, blood-red eyes, supple lips, and a well-endowed figure that could rival the most beautiful women he had seen. She had a mature and easygoing aura about her. Neo. She floated around him with a smile. Hee, I knew you would like this appearance. Let's check your status, Neo said before Obidus revealed more of his preferences. The sword's spirit manifestation looked at him with a smile, believing her words had flustered him. Even if only a bit. Neo could only ignore her reaction. He knew she was taking her revenge for all the teasing he did in the past. He focused on the sword's upgraded status. Obidus. Type. Sacred Treasure. Rank. Stage 1. Ability. Harmonization awakened. What does awakened mean? My ability became stronger. I can use harmonization on others now, Obidus answered. Neo was greatly surprised. If what Obidus said was true, he could now use holy and life elementals to heal dark-type element users. I don't think I've heard of someone capable of such a thing before. That means I'm the first person who can do something like this, Neo thought. Neo knew the world was vast, and the cosmos was vaster. But Obidus' ability was unique to her. It was highly likely only he had such an ability. Are you happy? Yes, very, very happy, Your Highness. Neo chuckled when Obidus tried to get praise out of him. Even if she had grown, she still had a childish side to her. The sword spirit manifestations. I twitched after reading his thoughts. She harumphed and disappeared, promising that the next time it would be Neo who would be embarrassed, not her. It's not a competition. He stopped speaking when he realized Obidus would not listen. Shaking his head, he focused on the breakthrough. He referred to the primordial world core condensation technique. Obidus, now completed, could be used as a central point of his world. To create a primordial world core, Neo needed all elementals he wanted to be in his world and use them to start building his world core. Neo only had a few affinities. He couldn't procure all elemental types inside the abyss. Thankfully, the technique came with a small amount of elementals of every element. They were stored within Neo's mind and could only be used to aid the creation of his world core. Neo gathered his thoughts. He followed the instructions to create his world core. Large beads of sweat rolled out of his forehead. His body shivered under the strain of energy drain. A thought occurred to Neo while he was creating the world core. Where was his world core located? His divine energy core had been located inside his body and soul. It was a metaphysical object that could exist in two places at once. What about the world core? Where was it? Neo was already creating the world core, so it had to be somewhere. But where was that? Somewhere. He felt like a human who could move arms and breathe but had no idea how he was doing such things. Fortunately, his lack of understanding didn't prove to be a hindrance to his breakthrough. His world energy underwent earth-shattering changes. The shadow space around him began to crumble, and after days of focus, Neo completed his world core. The shockwave erupted from him. It was not destruction like before. The shockwave transcended time and space, traveling far and wide. Zara and Ava were alerted of Neo's breakthrough. What was that? Ava muttered. That. Neo's breakthrough is completed, Zara muttered. C441 Missing World. They waited for Neo. Seconds turned into minutes and suddenly an unfathomable pressure descended. He came out of his shadow space, Zara realized. The source of the presence was walking towards them. It surprised her that Neo was not holding back his aura like he usually did, but she chalked it up to his control being not good enough to hold back his newly grown presence. Ava clamped her mouth shut when she looked at Neo. He was expressionless as usual. But his aura was different. She turned to Zara. Is it me, or is he? Yeah, he looks irritated. Neo walked up to them. Where is Elizabeth? She is undergoing her breakthrough, Zara answered. After Neo ranked up to first step, Heavenbreaker Ascender, which was equal to a stage 2 world, Elizabeth could complete her breakthrough to exalted rank. There is some good news at least, Neo muttered. I wonder if she will be grade 4 or grade 3. I doubt she will reach only grade 5 with her talent. His words could have given a heart attack to anyone. People could only do one breakthrough at once. But Elizabeth was different. She had talent, and for the past year, she was stuck at Paragon rank due to Neo, who was her world. She used the time to strengthen her foundations. In her own words, she was a stronger Paragon now than the first time, and her being stuck on Paragon had helped her instead. Something is definitely wrong with him. Yeah. Neo ignored Zara and Ava and entered the house. Zara found some time to talk alone with him in the evening and approached him. She put a bottle of alcohol in front of him and smiled. Care for a drink? Yeah. She poured him a shot. Neo downed it without saying anything. The two continued to drink in silence for minutes before Zara finally approached the topic. Why are you in a bad mood? I'm not. Fuck. Neo muttered, feeling tipsy. The alcohol Zara took out could affect stage 3 gods, let alone him. He could purify his body at any moment and erase the effects if he wanted to. But he didn't do so now. I'm now almost as strong as a grade 5 fabled. Not quite there yet, but infinitely closer. What? Zara was surprised at the revelation. During the past year, she had become good friends with Neo and Elizabeth. The time they spent together and the training she put them through helped her realize Neo was not an avatar of a world but a Heavenbreaker. Even so, he was a first-step Heavenbreaker who just ascended. He shouldn't be stronger than a typical grade 5 exalted. How is his combat power far above his rank? The difference between ranks increased as one ranked up. In exalted rank, a grade 5 exalted defeating a grade 4 exalted, or a grade 3 exalted defeating a grade 2 exalted, was nearly impossible. Ranks and sub-ranks were there for a reason. If one could fight enemies who were higher ranked than them, then there would have been no need to make different ranks. It sounds like insanity that he can fight a grade 5 fabled at his rank. Neo had said he was infinitely close to being a grade 5 fabled, and he wasn't there yet. Before this, he was as strong as a grade 1 exalted. Rank-wise, there was no difference. But the current Neo could fight 10 Neos from before the breakthrough, and he would have a landslide victory. Why are you irritated? That sounds like good news to me. Because I fucking can't use my world. What? I need to know my world's name to deploy my world, and I have no fucking idea about how to do that. I can't even tell what my world is, or where it is. Inside my body, soul, mind. Fuck. Where is it? Zara blinked. She had only drunk a bit since she wanted to be clear-minded to talk with Neo. His words confused her. You said you were almost as strong as a fabled. Was that without including your world, or with it? Without it, of course, Neo snapped. So he can't use the powers he gained from the breakthrough, and he is still that strong. I did hear Heavenbreakers were strong, but this is beyond my imagination. No wonder even outer gods are afraid of them. Zara chuckled, understanding that Neo was pissed off for a small reason. You will find the name of your world over time. There is no need to rush. It's common for people to not be able to control their abilities after a breakthrough. Neo clenched the glass. There was a need to rush. They had to get out of this hellhole as soon as possible. After he made the breakthrough, he sensed an incredible amount of death. So much death should have killed most of them, if not everyone. Yet they were perfectly fine. Neo didn't understand what was happening. He needed to gain the ability to deploy his world. Only then, when he became a being on par with a world, he might be able to sense what was wrong here. She is here, Zara suddenly said. The two of them came downstairs. Elizabeth noticed Neo's flushed face as soon as she saw him. Congrats. Were you drinking? Yeah, Neo answered, confused. Is something wrong with that? No, it's not. I apologize if my question was rude. Neo didn't push for answers. Later, he cooked some dinner for everyone and found out Elizabeth reached grade 3 exalted. He had made some desserts to congratulate her. After the dinner, he left the house to train. What happened to him? He doesn't drink unless it's something serious, Elizabeth asked Zara. It's nothing, just. Zara recounted what Neo had told her. Since they were moving through the abyss together, it was necessary to know how strong their ally was and if they had suffered mental or physical injuries that reduced their combat strength. The group returned to their journey after completing the breakthroughs. It took them 4 days to reach the base of the tree. So what you are saying is that we need to enter the nightmare tree? Zara asked Ava to make sure she hadn't misheard. Yes, that's exactly what we need to do. Abyss is the only place where Tartarus core can be, but we didn't find it anywhere. The only place left is inside the nightmare tree. We need to dig into the tree. No, I mean, Ava put together her thoughts before voicing them. The core must be hiding inside the nightmare of one of the people caught here. The group nodded. The world core could be a physical object or a spiritual object. Since they had not found anything yet, there was a high chance it was a spiritual object present inside one of the nightmares. Ava came up with the theory after careful deliberation and observation of the environment in the abyss. Isn't that a checkmate for us? We have to enter the nightmares to find the core, and Tartarus is the one creating those nightmares. It can control everything inside that place and defeat us easily, Elizabeth said. I suppose I didn't explain it properly. There are 2 types of going inside the tree of nightmare. C442 theory. The first nightmare is the collective nightmare that everyone is in together. That's the place the Grand Expedition believed to be the abyss of nightmare. It has 3 floors and 9 zones. The previous Grand Expeditions have scouted the entire place, and they never found the world core there. Hence, they believed the world core was beyond the 3rd floor. However, Ava swept her gaze around. We now know there is nothing beyond the 3rd floor. That place is fake to keep them trapped. Even if there is something beyond the 3rd floor, it's logical to believe Tartarus won't keep its core there, since it can be targeted by the members of the Grand Expedition, Ava explained. You think there is another nightmare, and the world core is in there? Elizabeth questioned. Indeed, I do believe that. I can sense it with my nightmare affinity, and I believe Neo can do the same. Everyone caught above is going through a different, individual nightmare. You just said everyone is going through a combined nightmare before this. Elizabeth pointed out the obvious clash of information. That's what I meant by saying there are 2 types of nightmare. One is the collective nightmare. The conscious mind of everyone is caught there together. The second is the individual nightmare. The subconscious mind of every person trapped in the individual nightmare. The world core is hiding inside one of those individual nightmares. Ava pointed at the people above. The individual nightmare is inside their head, while the collective nightmare is happening inside the nightmare tree. It's why the vines were protecting people but not the nightmare tree itself. Neo nodded. Her theory, while far-fetched, had solid basis. Since the world core was protecting every person, it was hard to tell exactly whose subconscious mind it was hiding, which must be the world core's goal, given that there were millions of people caught by the nightmare tree. So we go inside the second type of nightmare, find the world core, and defeat it, Neo muttered, then spoke aloud. There are millions of people here. It will take too much time. Also, Tartarus can still control the second type of nightmare, no? Elizabeth frowned. I doubt it can control it fully, Neo said. Tartarus is creating two types of gigantic and complex nightmares. The nightmares are so vivid that people can't tell they are nightmares. Such level of complexity can't be done with simple elemental manipulation. It has to be the result of Tartarus, nightmare elements concept. The difference between elemental manipulation and concept was simple. Neo could use death to kill. It was elemental manipulation. His concept also killed, but by putting them to eternal sleep. It was not a normal death. This was a concept. I see. So that's how it is. If the nightmares are created from a concept, then Tartarus itself has to follow the rules of the concept. Exactly. Neo nodded. Concepts gave tremendous powers. But they bound people to their rules too. Neo had once lost his death because he had rejected the concept imbued in his bloodline. He was able to gain a new concept. Nonetheless, he could no longer use judgment, a subskill of his blessing, as it needed the impartial death concept. One had to realize that Neo could rebuild his concept as impartial death originally did not belong to him. Had impartial death been his concept, and then he rejected it, he might not have been able to create another concept again. Tartarus doesn't kill, it punishes the evildoers. It's highly likely its concept is related to punishment, and these nightmares are created using that concept. In other words, it can't use the nightmare to kill us, only punish us with it, which it is already doing, but we escaped, Neo explained. He didn't voice the most obvious problem of their plan. It was an unproven theory. If Tartarus had another concept, it could kill them as soon as they entered its nightmare again. There is no point in being here and wondering if our theory is right or wrong. We can only enter the nightmare and hope for the best, Zara spoke up. The remaining three nodded. How should we enter the nightmares that are inside the subconscious mind? Only Ava and I have the nightmare element, and we might not be able to bring you two inside too. Even if we can enter the subconscious mind's nightmare, there are millions here. Searching without any direction will. Neo stopped speaking. Artemis, blessing. Maybe that would work. All of us will enter. I would have to request you to exert yourself and make sure Elizabeth and I are brought together, Zara said. After all, fighting against the world core would need all the combat power we can gather. How will we know in which person's mind the world core is hiding? Elizabeth questioned. If Neo's blessing works, we will know our destination easily. If it doesn't, we keep moving from one mind to another and hope for the best. The obvious method was to wake up more people. If they had numbers, the radius of search would increase. But waking up people was hard. Let's do it, Neo said. He held Elizabeth's palm and touched the nightmare tree's bark with his other hand. Ava did the same with Zara. He used his nightmare element and tried to connect to the nightmares being created by the tree. Beads of sweat rolled as he felt he had breached something. Suddenly, a large suction force began to pull his mind in. That must be the collective nightmare. I can't go there. Neo struggled to make sure he wasn't sucked into the collective nightmare. He looked around and noticed he was floating in a starry sky. A shapely female figure made of light particles floated next to him, her hand in his hand. Elizabeth. Yes, it's me, the female figure spoke. While the two spoke, two more female figures made of light appeared. C443 deal with Artemis. Neo and Elizabeth. Ava's voice echoed from the newly arrived figures. Yeah, it's us. After confirming all of them were inside the nightmare tree, Neo swiftly used Artemis' blessing. He had to hurry and get moving before they were sucked into the large black hole, which he assumed to be the collective nightmare. The blessing works. His mind froze when multiple paths of silvery light appeared before him. They were struggling to move in different directions, towards the smaller black holes in the distance. However, the suction force of the giant black hole pulled all silvery paths into itself. Neo, does the blessing work? Zara asked. His hanging words were a clear answer. It's okay. Let's enter a random individual nightmare, Zara said. We can't stay here for longer, or the collective nightmare will suck us in. Neo nodded and followed them. However, he couldn't help but frown. There were millions of individual nightmares. Going through each one of them and hoping to find the world core would waste too much time. Hey, Artemis, can't you put your blessing on overload and make it stronger temporarily? It should be possible. Neo knew it since he could pass on his powers through intent. While those powers wouldn't be called a blessing, the fundamental foundation of how they worked was the same. Don't ignore me, he called out again. Neo clicked his tongue. He knew exactly what he had to say for Artemis to say yes to his request. Fine, I will pay for it. There was no response. Fuck, I will show you a bed action scene. There, I said it. Happy. You should have said it sooner. Too bad, the price has increased now. What? Neo suddenly felt he was making a deal with a greedy businessman. Neo, is something wrong? Elizabeth turned to him. No, everything is fine, he told her, then talked to Artemis. Fuck do you mean the price increased? Huh, I don't like that tone. It feels like you are trying to negotiate. Well, we can negotiate, but I doubt you have the time for it. Neo looked at the giant black hole that was sucking them in. They were resisting, however slowly but surely they were being pulled into it. What's the increased price? The action scene should be yours, and do it within a month. Are you fucking crazy? Look where I am. Not my problem to handle. Neo had to calm himself forcefully. If Artemis had a physical body, or even a spiritual body, he would have dragged her out from himself and given her a good beating. Should he just lie, say yes now and refuse to pay later? While that was a good idea, he would end up antagonizing Artemis, and she wouldn't help him in the future again. This crazy bitch. Hee. I have always heard dragons are beasts in the bed. I can finally see them in action, she said as if she couldn't hear him cursing. Neo took a deep breath and relented. Fine. The blessing of Artemis within him started to churn. It nudged Neo to stop using the infinite mana for a minute. Neo relented. The blessing looped the infinite mana into itself and used it to strengthen the Wayfarer's subskill that was part of the blessing. The silvery motes of light started to grow in number. The giant black hole couldn't suck them all. Dozens of silver paths formed. They connected to the small black holes far into the distance. The blessing is working, Neo said. But, Zara questioned. It shows multiple locations as the destination. That means either Tartarus can trick the blessing, or the world core is present in multiple locations. It can't be present in multiple locations at once. While doing that is possible, it defeats the purpose of hiding. That just makes it easier to find. Existing in multiple locations at the same time was certainly within the realms of possibility. But Tartarus was unlikely to do such thing. Neo doubted the blessing could be tricked either. The blessing had strengthened itself just now, similar to how a computer overclocked itself. It should be able to ignore whatever ability Tartarus was using to hide itself from search-type abilities. We will know when we reach the location. Neo, lead the way. Neo nodded and moved, following the path of silvery motes. He stopped before a smaller black hole and touched it. His body was sucked in. When his consciousness returned, he was sitting at a dining table inside a large castle room. He turned to the side and noticed Elizabeth and others waking up. Neo sat at the head of the table while others sat at the sides. The door of the dining room suddenly opened, and a familiar face entered. Tyr, the clan leader of the Weapon Dragon clan. The youngest dragon clan leader in history. Greetings, father, Tyr gave a bow to Neo, then turned to the others. Greetings, sisters. Confusion appeared in Elizabeth's eyes. Powerful dark-type element users were rare on Luminara. Hence, she didn't know how the dark-type elements were used at higher levels. It made sense she didn't understand what was happening. Neo grabbed her hand and spoke to Tyr before speaking to her. Come, let's eat. Tyr obeyed his command. While he started dining, Neo used his intent to talk to Elizabeth. We are inside Tyr's subconscious mind that is currently experiencing a nightmare. From the looks of it, we have been assigned roles as people Tyr knew in the past. Elizabeth's gaze asked why they weren't revealing to Tyr that this was a nightmare. If he became aware, it would be easier to break this nightmare. Neo shook his head. Breaking the nightmare wasn't the main goal. Besides, breaking a nightmare wasn't easy either. Look, I'm going to show it, Neo told Elizabeth, then turned to Tyr. Tyr, this is a nightmare. We've come here to locate the world core and destroy it. What? This isn't a real place. It's just a figment of imagination created by Tartarus to trap you. Currently, your physical body is caught by the Tree of Nightmare along with the other members of the Grand Expedition. Nightmare. Grand Expedition. Tyr's eyes grew hazy. This place isn't real. Neo repeated himself again. Nor am I your dad. I'm Neo Hargraves, one of the people who were brought to join the grand expedition by the Great Disaster, Kane Williams. Wake up. Tyr. Great. Disaster. ... Author's note. Check the chapter comments for details on the March bonus chapter system. It's too long to include here, and adding it would increase the chapter's price. Don't miss out. Chapter 444 Doubts. Tyr froze. He blinked after a few seconds, and his eyes became normal. He returned to dining as if nothing had happened. Elizabeth looked at Neo with a questioning gaze. His subconscious mind forgot everything I just told him. This will keep happening. He won't understand he is in a nightmare. If it was his conscious mind that was trapped here, we might have been able to make him aware of the nightmare. However, that is impossible with his subconscious mind. While Neo explained things to Elizabeth, a doubt arose in his mind. Tartarus had trapped him in an individual nightmare too. But Neo had been conscious back there. Why? Did Tartarus do it purposefully so as to torture Neo mentally? There were more inconsistencies when Neo thought about the events that occurred back then. He had believed he was able to escape the nightmare as he had awakened the nightmare element, and because he was a heavenbreaker, thus, his mind was too powerful to be tricked. But now he doubted such a thing. He had trained in the nightmare element for over a year and understood how powerful it was. Moreover, Tartarus was a stage 3 world. Neo, at that time, was only as strong as a stage 2 world. He shouldn't have been able to escape the nightmare on his own. After eating the food, Tyr left for training. What should we do now? Ava questioned. We search for the world core. For now, let's check this place in groups of 2. If you find something suspicious, don't engage. Return to this room, Neo said. He left an intent clone with Zara and Ava's group before he looked through the place with Elizabeth. The clone would allow the 2 groups to alert each other in case of emergencies. It's quite big, Elizabeth muttered as the 2 walked through the corridor. He nodded. The large statues lined along the corridors, and the opulent decorations were somewhat familiar to Neo. He couldn't remember where he had seen them before, though. Is this the palace of the Weapon Dragon clan? She asked. It could be, and it could be not. The nightmare is often a mix of reality and imagination. Sometimes it is created from the caster's past, and sometimes from the memories of the target caught in the nightmare. The only thing that would remain constant in the nightmare was the nightmare part. Other than that, everything could be changed when the nightmare world was created. Elizabeth continued to bring up topics for conversation. She usually remained silent. Neo wondered if she was doing it so she could talk more with him, as this was one of the rare moments when they were alone. He shook his head. I'm being self-conscious because of that deal with Artemis. Neo was drowned in thoughts, wondering if his thoughts were true or not. He almost wanted to peek into her mind. His thoughts were put on a break when Elizabeth's feet suddenly came to halt. Neo turned back to look at her. Did you notice it? She asked. Quote ellipsis question mark quote. We have been walking for an hour in a loop. An hour? Neo asked. He was busy with his thoughts for an hour. He groaned. His sense of time was getting worse with each passing day. Neo. Elizabeth looked at him worriedly, noticing his mind seemed to be somewhere else. It's nothing. Neo shook his head. What did you mean we were walking in a loop? That. Elizabeth pointed at the door next to her. It's the door of the dining hall where we ate along with Tyr. Neo became alarmed. He opened the doors and saw the dining hall beyond it. How many times did we pass this door? 3 times. Neo frowned. They came back to where they had started from. He grabbed the air next to him. The space twisted as if he was holding an invisible blade, and he slashed. A dark arc of energy shot out. It clashed against the walls and dissipated harmlessly. We are in an infinite castle, Neo muttered. This must be the stage for the nightmare. We can't leave it. Not by force, at least. Neo erased the unnecessary thoughts and looked at the castle properly for the first time. A chill crawled up his spine when he realized why the castle looked familiar. Did you notice something? Zara asked as she and Ava returned. Before I tell you that, can you answer me one thing? Is this the castle of the Weapon Dragon clan? No, their estate doesn't have a place like this. I see. Neo turned around and faced them. This castle is a replica of my dad's palace. What? Ava muttered, stunned. You mean your father is? Her words hung in the air. She recalled Neo had told her something. He came to Tartarus to find his father. No, Neo said, knowing what she was thinking. Tartarus isn't my dad. My dad is. His situation is complicated. My point is, I have heard Tartarus' voice and felt its presence. Its intent is completely different from my dad's. So I'm sure it isn't my father. Neo kept his next words to himself. But Tartarus is definitely related to Dad. It was angry when it realized I had given up on impartial death, and it now created a world that is the exact replica of Dad's palace. Neo, you talked to Tartarus. Ava almost grabbed his shoulders and shook the answer out of him. Yes. Is that something rare? No one has talked to Tartarus or ever sensed its presence. This is the first in history. Wait. Zara suddenly spoke up. How did you escape the nightmare, Neo? I conquered the nightmares it showed me. Then I used the nightmare element with the void element and tore open the nightmare world. I see. I always thought something was weird about the way you escaped. You were conscious in an individual nightmare. Even without that, a world as powerful as Tartarus shouldn't have any trouble keeping you trapped in a nightmare forcefully. It was weird how you escaped easily. Now, I know how you could do that. Quote ellipsis dot question mark quote. C445 Truth about Tartarus. Tartarus is an angel of your dad, Zara said. Angels cannot harm their gods under any circumstances, or plot against them. You have your dad's bloodline. His blood flowing within you reduces any type of damage you get from Tartarus, whether it is physical or psychological. It was only then that Neo recalled his trait, eternal. 50% damage reduction against all damage. Combined with the protection against Tartarus he got from Hades' blood, it made sense Tartarus could entrap him in a nightmare with force. Nightmares were a psychological attack. The damage Neo received from Tartarus was largely mitigated. Wait, Ava spoke up. Tartarus is a world. How could an angel become a world? And who is his father to be the god of someone who could become a world? About your first question, I'm not sure how it happened. It might be possible that Tartarus found a sacred treasure that gave it such ability or. Zara looked at Neo. He understood what she was trying to say. Or maybe Tartarus became a heavenbreaker, and heavenbreakers can act as a world, he thought. What about his father? Who is he? The god of supreme death, Hades. He is famous. I've traveled through the cosmos, and the legends of Hades' battles are still sung everywhere. He has many names. The undefeatable warrior, the holder of justice, the commander of the Legion 81. It's not surprising one of his angels found a way to become a world. In fact, this explains why Tartarus is obsessed with punishing evildoers. Hades was known for his impartial death. Tartarus is following the words of its god. She stared at Neo. Can't you ask your dad to stop Tartarus? I wouldn't be trapped here if I could do that, and I only found out now that Tartarus could be one of my dad's angels. He kept to himself that Tartarus was enraged at him because he was Hades' son. Everything now made sense. Unfortunately, it didn't solve their problems. I suppose we are back to our original goal. Searching for the world core hidden in this nightmare world and subduing it, Zara said. I might have an idea about that, Neo replied. We can't find the world core, right? What if we forced the world core to come to us? How would we do that? Zara questioned. By destroying this nightmare, Neo answered. Zara tried it. She couldn't destroy any wall or floor, Ava answered instead of Zara. There is another way to destroy the nightmare. A normal one that doesn't involve using brute force. You mean helping Tyr get over his nightmare? Yes. But we don't know what his nightmare is about. It could take us weeks figuring out the answers. I might know what it is, Zara replied to Ava. Judging by how Tyr is busy with training and he calls his father, he hasn't become the clan leader of the Weapon Dragon clan yet. At this time, Tyr should already be strong enough to join the championship that would decide the clan leader. But he wouldn't join. He became the Weapon Dragon clan leader. That means he did join the competition, right? He did that since I persuaded him. I doubt the same would happen here. Even if I could do that, it wouldn't solve the root cause of his nightmare. It's complicated, but simply put, he doesn't want to defeat his father. That's why he isn't participating. Family issues? Neo asked bluntly. No, not really. It's. Zara stopped speaking. She looked at Neo and Elizabeth and asked something else. Tartarus has a lot of darkness users. How do you think they maintain their sanity? They have strong willpower. Correct, but that's only true for a few. For most, they use the focus tunnel method. It involves finding something to focus on. Obsess over, if you will. After all, if you are focused on a singular goal, the darkness will have trouble leading you astray. And this is somehow tied to our current situation. Yes, it is, Zara said. Most darkness users have escaping Tartarus as their goal. Tyr is different. He chose, surpassing his father, to be his focus. If he defeats his father, he will lose his goal. So he is afraid of not having a goal to chase after. Yes. Can't he just find something else to obsess over? He can, but you need to consider his emotional side too. His father had been training to become the clan leader since long ago. How would he feel if he lost to his youngest son and had his dream shattered? Tyr is afraid of something like that coming to pass, but he also doesn't want to hold back if he participates in the championship, as he feels it would be an insult to his own goal and an insult to the spirit of a warrior that his father cherishes, Zara explained. Okay. That is complicated. Not really. Zara smiled. It suddenly gave an ominous premonition to Neo. We have two choices here. First is we show Tyr something that is better than chasing after strength, and he changes his goal. Currently, his own goal and his father's dream are clashing within his mind, and it's the source of his nightmare. If he gets something else to obsess over, it will break his nightmare, as he wouldn't care about his goal of surpassing his father anymore, which would have been validated if he won, but winning shatters his father's dream, Zara said. How would we do that? The fastest would be teaching him love or showing him the joys of love. Love is the most overwhelming emotion. It's easier to infect Tyr with it. Well, there are only 4 of us here. Who is going to love him and teach him that? And no, I'm not doing it. We don't need to tie Tyr and one of us together. It can work even if the love blooms between 2 of us, and Tyr sees it. Think of it as watching a television show. You can see love drama and fall in love with it. A lot of young men and women want to find love after seeing it on the shows. Tyr will be the same. The way Zara was smiling while looking at Neo and Elizabeth said plenty about who would be the actors to show love to Tyr. Neo rolled his eyes. What's the second method? You need to defeat Tyr. The whole situation is a problem as Tyr is stronger than his father, which is the role you are assuming in the nightmare. If you can defeat him, Tyr wouldn't be haunted by the dilemma that is crushing him from within. He can fight without holding back, and his father's dream wouldn't be shattered, as his father would win. Neo frowned. That was easier said than done. Tyr right now was strong enough to become the clan leader of the Weapon Dragon clan. That meant he was at the high end of fabled rank. If you are thinking Tyr is quite strong, then you are wrong. Yes, he is strong for his age, but he is only around early fabled rank at this point in time. How did he become clan leader with that strength? Neo asked, surprised. Early fabled rank was strong, but not enough to lead one of the 5 dragon clans. C446 fighting against the clan leader of Weapon Dragon clan. The championship works in a simple way. Everyone except the clan leader and a select few will participate. The winner of the championship will undergo Dragon Blood Awakening. It enhances their strength by a large margin. Hypothetically, it makes the championship winner as strong as the current clan leader. Then, the current clan leader and the championship winner will have a battle. The winner becomes the new clan leader. If the championship winner loses, they won't be allowed to participate in the tournament from next year, Zara explained. Neo nodded. He finally understood the crux of the matter. Tyr had only one chance to become the clan leader if he participated in the championship. While he wanted to let his father win, he also wanted to stay true to his goal and chase the first rank with all he had. The dilemma was the source of his nightmare. If he could find another goal, it wouldn't matter to him whether he won or lost. So go fight him now and defeat him. That way he will participate in the championship, and it will be even better if you win there too, Zara said. Tyr had reduced his training frequency as the championship got closer. If Neo proved he was not an opponent Tyr could defeat easily, Tyr would start training in earnest, which would make it easier for them to close the nightmare. Neo nodded. He found Tyr in the training hall. Father. Tyr stopped and turned to Neo. Is there anything you need from me? I wanted to train with you. Tyr was about to refuse with an excuse when suddenly Neo grabbed the empty air. The space twisted, and alarms rang in Tyr's mind. Before he realized what was happening, he had started preparing spells and was baring his fangs at Neo. When did father get so strong? Tyr thought. Neo didn't give him time to react and dashed forward. He slashed. His formless sword zipped across space, its blade teleporting next to Tyr's neck. Tyr couldn't see anything, but he felt the space twist. He understood his neck would fall if he didn't move. Block. A metallic clang echoed. The space returned to normal, and Neo retracted his sword. Are you serious about this, father? I am, Neo said. Do you think I don't know you are planning not to participate in the championship? I don't need your consideration, Tyr. I will win by myself. Tyr remained rooted on his spot. He never considered the fact that his father knew his dilemma. No, this is better. You are right, father. I don't want to participate in the championship. If I do, I will shatter your dream. But I also don't want to give up this chance to become the strongest of our clan. So, Tyr took a step forward. The air around him charged with energy. Please defeat me here. That would quell the worries in my heart. Alarms rang in Neo's mind. Don't worry. I don't plan on being defeated. He smiled and tightened the grip around the sword's hilt. Tyr raised his hand before bringing it down in a single swoop. Die. A gigantic sword materialized right above Neo's head. Neo moved away, but it was as if Tyr's words were divine truth. He couldn't dodge. The sword was meant to kill him, and death couldn't be avoided. Neo swung his sword upwards. Death essence flared around his formless sword and clashed against the falling behemoth. Shockwaves erupted. Neo grunted and increased the force behind his attack. His sword's length rapidly increased, and it sliced through Tyr's attack. Just then, Tyr snapped his fingers. Again, time was instantly turned back. Neo was slashing upwards to destroy the falling giant sword. Strengthen. 2 more giant swords fell from the sky. The situation made Neo realize that nothing would change even if he blocked the current attack. Tyr would reset the events by saying, again, and repeat the attack after strengthening it. All Tyr needed to do was supply energy to make his words come true. Neo burned his world energy and activated the concept of time, null hour. The gigantic swords disappeared from the sky. He was left exhausted in return. That was only a greeting. If you are tired with this, you can't win. Don't worry. I'm just getting started too. Neo deployed his true domain. Death elementals started to appear in the surroundings. Tyr was alarmed. How did you get a true domain? You need Savon mastery for it, and no one in Tartarus can go beyond expert. Tyr's words were stuck in his throat when Neo deployed the true domain of darkness. Then, he deployed the true domain of time. Then, the true domain of shadows. The true domain of holy. The true domain of nightmare. How did you do something like this? Tyr had met people who came from outside. They all said one thing. Don't try to master too many elements. Focus on 1 or 2, or else you will never reach expert or higher in any element. Even the famed geniuses were no exception. Mastering elements could not be done with talent alone. So, how? Neo had true domains of not 1, not 2, not 3, but 6 elements. How was that possible? That was beyond comprehensible. Why are you sweating? Tyr looked at his trembling arms. They were soaked in cold sweat. He clenched his fists. Ha ha, ha. His chuckles turned into a boisterous laugh, and the seriousness in his gaze was replaced by a maniacal look. I'm sorry. He grinned. I'm sorry for talking to you lightly. He cracked his neck and stretched his muscles. I won't repeat my mistake again. Just as Tyr completed his words, he dashed towards Neo. Sword. A gigantic sword appeared in the sky. Tyr's hand transformed into an enormous dragon hand, and he grabbed the sword before swinging it down at Neo. Neo fused that null hour with his true domain of time and attacked the sword. But suddenly, Tyr spoke. You cannot erase, dodge, or block my attacks. C447 Reality Manipulation. A strange light covered Tyr's sword. Neo tried to block, but Tyr's blade snaked around his sword as if it would reach him no matter what. The sight of a gigantic blade twisting like a snake, changing size unpredictably, was disorienting. Neo's reaction was a beat late. That moment was enough. The blade carved into his shoulder. Tyr frowned as the blade came to a stop before it could cleave Neo in half. He tried to pull it back, but Neo's hand clamped down like a vice. Neo increased the strength behind his grip, and with a single motion, he shattered Tyr's sword. The fragmented blade erupted into energy particles. The sudden release of energy distorted space, bending light and reducing visibility. Neo used the smokescreen without hesitation and dashed forward. I'm stronger and faster than you. The strange light around Tyr flared again. His body blurred, and in an instant, he reappeared above Neo, bringing down a human-sized sword. Neo activated null hour, only to find Tyr was now resistant to its effects. He wasn't surprised and reacted quickly, learning from his earlier mistake. He called upon true darkness to devour the force of Tyr's swing and slow him. Yet Tyr's momentum never slowed. The strange light wrapped around him seemed to empower him. Sink. The space between Neo's feet and the ground crumbled. His balance broke. He reacted instantly, shifting his weight and blocking Tyr's sword just before impact. Before Tyr could press his advantage, Neo used eternal sleep through his true domain of death. True domains strengthened their elements' elemental manipulation and elemental abilities. Moreover, it allowed him to launch his attacks from anywhere inside the true domain. Tyr's eyes and mouth were forced into slumber. His movements faltered for the first time. Neo struck. His knee slammed into Tyr's abdomen, sending the young dragon crashing into the distant wall. Repair. The injuries Tyr sustained disappeared as if they never existed. However, his eyes and mouth couldn't be healed. Blindness didn't obstruct him. His powerful senses covered his lack of sight. As for his silenced mouth, did you forget my concept, Father? I can use the truth of mind. Neo wasn't surprised Tyr could speak telepathically. While he could have used intent, his concept allowed him to imbue weapon affinity into words spoken from the mind, something normally impossible. The fusion of truth and weapon affinity only worked with spoken words, not with intent words. I don't know how you learn so many concepts and so many true domains, but isn't it time you stopped pretending? Using all of that must be draining your energy reserves. I can see the weakness you are trying to hide. You only put my eyes and mouth to sleep, not my whole body. It shows you can barely sustain your abilities at once, he taunted. Does everyone with truth never shut up, or is it just you? Neo's taunt was stupid. Tyr could see he was trying to agitate him. But, I can defeat you in a single move. The light surrounding Tyr exploded outward. A storm of energy surged through his limbs. Neo prepared himself to clash with Tyr. Just as Tyr saw his weaknesses, their earlier exchanges showed him the weakness of truth. Truth can manipulate reality, but it costs a lot of energy. That's why Tyr is restricting himself to basic reality alterations. And affecting me directly is impossible. The energy within me is too condensed, and it's acting like a shield. It is the reason Tyr is using indirect attacks and buffs to fight. Everyone had energy within them, and as they ascended, that energy increased in size and became increasingly compressed. It was like sitting in an empty seat. While one sat there, no one else could sit on it. Similarly, having condensed energy within oneself prevented others from using their abilities directly within their opponent. If not for it, Neo and other darkness users could devour their opponents from within. Or he could manipulate their death or life and kill them easily. The only time when a person could deploy their attacks within their opponents would be when the attacker was far stronger than their enemy. True aim. Tyr's punch accelerated and distorted the space. It was as if the blow had already landed before it even reached Neo. He twisted his body, attempting to evade, but the strike still connected. His skull shattered. Half his face was obliterated. Neo didn't even flinch. The missing portions of his face began regenerating instantly. Tyr frowned. He closed in and slashed with his sword, which was reinforced by truth. The attack was meant to land no matter what Neo did. After seeing the same attack multiple times, Neo had learned the way to counter it. If it was meant to land no matter what, then he would return it with another attack. Divine Swordsmanship 8 Form. Kami no Shinpan. Tyr's arm was sliced apart from his body. His sword and the hand holding it fell, never reaching Neo. For any other warrior, this would have been the end. Tyr was surprised, but that was all. Repair. His body was returned to its peak condition. This wasn't healing or turning back time. It was plain and direct reality manipulation. Nonetheless, Tyr was no longer confident. He was breathing heavily, having blown through half of his energy pool already. There was no time to waste. Tyr lunged forward, his blade poised to carve Neo apart again. Neo narrowed his eyes. His energy generation was immense, but even he wasn't limitless. Tyr was right. Sustaining true domains, null hour, and eternal sleep simultaneously had drained him more than he'd let on. This had to end. Now. Neo made no move to dodge. Tyr's blade cut through him. Neo didn't resist. Instead, his arm, now infused with condensed death, latched onto Tyr's own limb. True darkness surged forth. He tried to devour Tyr's weapon affinity. It showed no signs of working. Neo changed his approach swiftly and devoured the light, the buff, surrounding Tyr. Tyr's expression flickered with surprise. That was the opening Neo needed. His other hand clenched into a fist. He released the power of the concept he had been gathering for this moment, null hour. Time warped. Tyr's form was engulfed in chaotic time elementals. His existence struggled against the force. C448 Proposal. His concept flared violently, strengthening the buff of truth to stop himself from being erased. Damn it. Tyr was a moment too late to realize it had been a trap. While he protected himself from null hour, Neo used another concept. Sleep. The true domain of death collapsed inward, focusing entirely on Tyr's core. Tyr clenched his teeth. He refused to go down alone. With the last reserves of his strength, he channeled every ounce of truth into a single, desperate strike. Explode. A miniature sun materialized between Neo and Tyr. It expanded instantly. The aftershock alone sent Neo hurtling backward. The sheer force behind it ruptured his torso, sent cracks through his ribs, and crushed his organs before his regeneration could catch up. The intense heat burned his organs and melted his bones. Tyr exhaled sharply. He was in no better condition. Although he had used a defense spell at the last moment, half of his body had been charred, and no bone in his body was left unharmed. The light in his eyes dimmed as sleep finally overtook him. Neo lay motionless for a moment, far from Tyr. Then, with a deep, ragged breath, he forced himself up, hand pressed against his broken chest. The pain was unbearable, even with his regeneration. Neo stared at the unconscious Tyr. He had won. It was a victory with a large margin, but Tyr could have won if Neo had made even a single mistake. He wasn't happy about it. Fuck. Multiple elemental affinities, all at Savon rank. 2 powerful traits, one of which gave him nigh impenetrable defense. Heavenbreak and his own. Near endless world energy. A god slayer weapon, and a formless sword. Death essence. Pseudo-dimensional shifting. Thousands of years of combat experience. 3 blessings. It took him everything to fight a dragon who was barely 100 years old and used only a single element at expert mastery. The victory did not bring him joy. It was a cold slap of reality. This was the result of his hard work. He could barely touch the heels of a genius after using everything he had. Neo, are you okay? Elizabeth's voice snapped him out of his thoughts. He turned towards her and nodded. Yeah, I'm fine. His body had healed back to his peak condition, and his world energy continued to flow through his body like an endless river. If one looked at him now, they wouldn't think he had gone through a life-death battle moments ago. But Elizabeth could see beyond his physical appearance. Before she could say anything, Neo opened his mouth. Look after Tyr. He should be healed within a few days. As for me, I will go and train. This defeat would push Tyr to train harder, and I might not be able to defeat him on the day of the championship if I don't grow stronger. Neo left without listening to their opinions. He walked aimlessly through the corridors. Although he had said he was going to train, he felt lost at the moment. He understood his thoughts were taking a dark turn due to the influence of nightmare element present in the nightmare world. However, were his thoughts wrong? Had his hard work actually mattered? Before he realized it, he was alone in a secluded room, drinking without any intention of stopping. His emotions were a mess. He never cared about how fast or slow others progressed. He was his own person. Only his progress mattered to him. But sometimes it hurt knowing that kids who had trained only for a century could be on par with him. Talented kids could achieve in a minute what he achieved by putting himself in a grinder for a century. Sometimes he thought maybe the path of power wasn't for him. It was for geniuses like Tyr who had both talent and determination. Not wastrels like him who had nothing but hard work to show for themselves. Without talent, he was bound to fall behind those who had both talent and determination. Neo, don't think like that. Your hard work was never a waste. He smiled faintly at the encouragement of Obidus. The sword spirit realized Neo's mood wasn't improving. She was about to speak when she suddenly sensed a presence outside the door. Knowing this problem could be solved now, the sword spirit returned to its stillness. The door opened, and Elizabeth entered. Her brows creased when she saw bottles rolling around the room. Neo was completely hammered. He turned towards her, and she saw his flushed face. I thought I said I wanted to be alone. You were drinking too much. Elizabeth cleaned the room with a simple spell. She knew Neo wouldn't stop drinking even if she told him to. Instead, she sat in front of him, took the bottle from his hand, and poured a glass for both of them. What are you doing? Drinking with you. I'm pretty sure you didn't like drinking much. It's fine if it's with you. The two of them drank the alcohol in silence. Neo didn't feel irritated by Elizabeth's presence. If anything, it helped him calm down. She spoke after she started to feel a bit tipsy. Why are you making a face like that? Quote ellipsis question mark quote. You look sad. Neo smiled faintly when he heard her. I guess the nightmare is affecting my emotions a bit too much if I am letting them appear on my face. She placed a hand over his hand and asked gently. What happened? It's nothing serious. Neo was about to lie when he suddenly stopped. He noticed the worry behind Elizabeth's gaze and decided to be honest. I was wondering if what I'm chasing is power or vanity, and if my goal is meaningless. He smiled melancholily. If it was not for vanity, then I wouldn't feel like this for having almost lost against Tyr. Doesn't this mean my goal was never power itself? Elizabeth realized he was doubting himself, wondering if all he had been doing was worthless. She squeezed his hand gently. It's not vanity. I have seen you work hard for your powers. You never trained for others' admiration. It was for yourself. Her gaze was fixed on his hands as she spoke. Neo was focused on listening to her, thus failed to realize they were holding hands intimately. You told me that only I could determine the value of my life. You are the same, Neo. Your goals have meaning when you believe in them yourself. Never doubt your dreams. It's not vanity. You never asked others to appreciate your efforts or tried to gain sympathy. You cherished your dreams and that's why you chased after them. It was never for others. So, don't say your goal had no meaning, Elizabeth said. Neo smiled lightly. Although his mood had been low, he was never going to stop training or blame his lack of talent for his slow growth. If he was growing at a slow pace, then he just had to train harder. Still, he couldn't deny Elizabeth's words warmed his heart and uplifted his mood. Then again, I am not wrong for feeling like this, right? Anyone would be put off if a kid could compete in their specialty, Neo joked, trying to uplift the heavy mood. It took him a moment to realize he had said something that would dampen the mood further. Before he could correct himself, Elizabeth, who finally got a chance, spoke up. Kid. Tyr is 130 years old. He is far from a kid. He is a kid in my eyes. He is not a kid. Elizabeth was strangely adamant about it. Are you sure we are talking about Tyr? I think it's someone else, he teased. Yes, I was talking about myself. I didn't like to hear that you think of me as a child. That sounds like a confession, Neo joked. Elizabeth didn't refute him. It left him stunned. He knew she had feelings for him, but he didn't think she would use this moment to confess. Look at me in the eye, and say that you think of me as a child. Neo tried to pull his hand back, but Elizabeth didn't let go. Her face was close. I'm blind. How can I look you in the eye? He tried to pass the moment as a joke. Unfortunately, Elizabeth wasn't having it again. For the past year, he had been avoiding her whenever she tried to get serious with him. Look at me and tell me you think of me as a child, and nothing more. Neo looked away, avoiding her gaze. But that was useless. Intent vision allowed him to sense everything within a large radius. He could see her eyes staring at him with conviction, the slight tremors in her hand that showed she was worried he would actually say yes, and her loudly beating heart. Neo could sense all of it. He could have lied. However, he didn't want to do that. Something told him he might come to regret it later. Now or never, Neo. Don't miss this chance, Obidus encouraged him. No, I don't see you as a child. See, was that hard? Elizabeth smiled. She looked mesmerizing. He had seen her smile a lot of times, and each time she looked more beautiful. Neo had to admit it. He had been denying his feelings for long. He didn't want to do that anymore. Neo. She came closer. Her face was only inches from his. Her words showed worry for him, but her eyes said something else. Intoxicated, she stared at his lips, expecting something more. It was then Neo made a mistake. He peeked into her thoughts after a year of avoiding it. Her feelings became clear to him. It broke the final resistance he had. His body moved on its own. Perhaps it was the influence of alcohol, or perhaps he finally had the courage to make the move. He leaned forward and planted a kiss on her lips. Chapter 449 Weeks-long training. Zara and Ava were waiting in another room. Ava continued to pace around anxiously while Zara drank her tea. You look impatient, right now. I'm just worried about Eliza. Ahem, Neo. Zara raised her brow when Ava corrected her words at the last second. The young dragon saw Elizabeth as her role model. Elizabeth was strong, aloof, and beautiful. While Neo was a good match for her, Ava hoped Elizabeth remained the untouched flower she was, not some love-struck woman. I don't think you need to worry about Neo. Elizabeth will support him properly, Zara said. She had given quite a few pieces of advice to Elizabeth before she sent her to talk with Neo. However, she kept it hidden from Ava. It was her way to help Neo and Elizabeth relieve them of their stress. A day went by, but there was no sign of Neo and Elizabeth leaving their room. Zara didn't think much of it. They were both high-rank awakeners. With their physical stats, it was no wonder they were busy. Another day went by, then another, and another. Ava lost all hope after there was no news of Elizabeth and Neo for a week. When several weeks went by, Zara became quite flustered. Isn't it time they come out? What the hell are they doing for weeks? Ava said irritably. Yeah, Zara muttered. Neo needs to start training for the championship. There isn't much time left for it. Right. Let me go and call them out. Don't. Zara stopped her swiftly. You do realize Neo might have an ancient dragon bloodline, right? Zara questioned. What about it? Zeus, Poseidon, Nyx, Apollo. All of them were humans and had human bloodlines. Their bloodlines later grew into the god bloodlines known today. Similarly, dragon bloodlines could be grown by their users and enhanced. Zara believed Neo was one such case, and he had an ancient dragon bloodline. Her reasoning was simple. His bloodline came from his parents, and Hades was old. Very old. He was one of the oldest known entities in the cosmos. If Hades had a dragon bloodline, it was highly likely he was an ancient dragon, which made Neo one too. What do you know about ancient dragons? They are creatures born during the inception of the cosmos. There is not much known about them since all of them have disappeared over time. What about their personality? Why are you asking questions like this? Ava said, and still answered, dragons are known for their prideful, lustful, and power-hungry nature. However, no dragon born in the current era is like that. These qualities actually belong to ancient dragons. According to the books I read, it was said this was a genetic nature of ancient dragons, which appeared due to the harsh nature of the universe creation era. Pride to make sure no one looked down on them and tried to trample them, lust to make new generations were born and their race did not die out, and hunger for power to be strong enough to protect themselves and their families, Ava explained. Exactly. Zara nodded. How many of those traits can you see in Neo? He is prideful. I never saw him ask for help or try to run away from your sadistic training. He is also quite power hungry. All he cares about is growing stronger. Indeed, Neo is prideful and ambitious. But he is not lustful. Not yet, at least. Until a few weeks ago, he was like a child who never tasted a sweet, and thus didn't crave sweet things. But that would change now. He tasted sweetness. Ava completed Zara's words, and sighed. You are right. I shouldn't disturb him. I would rather not. Piss him off. What the fuck are you guys talking about? The door to their room opened, and Neo entered. You are done? Ava asked not so kindly. I'm training with Elizabeth. She has the same elements as me, and it helps a lot. I'm not busy fucking around. He clicked his tongue. You are training? Ava questioned. Yeah, my real body is training with her. The one in front of you is my intent clone that I'm currently controlling. I was using it to patrol the area since the moment we came here, and it found something today. I took over its control to show the finding to you guys. It was a headache to split his focus between two places. But Neo was used to it after years of training. Come with me. He beckoned them. The two followed Neo and reached a cross-section corridor. Neo pointed at the door. Ava's eyes widened, and Zara became serious. The door hadn't been there until yesterday. Ava moved forward to check the door, while Zara stood behind with Neo. Do you know what it is? Zara questioned. I think the world of nightmare is changing now that Tyr is slowly overcoming his nightmare. The defeat against me must have changed something in his psyche. How did you find the door? I felt a presence. There is something behind the door that is calling out to my bloodline. That's how I found it. I can't open the door, though. The two became silent, and Ava continued to check the door and tried to open it. How is your training with Elizabeth going? Zara questioned suddenly. It's going fine. Are you training right now too? With my main body? Yeah. Zara smiled and leaned towards Neo. She whispered, I have quite a lot of diverse spells. Quote ellipsis dot question mark quote. One of them tells me the number of times a person took a tumble in hay. Neo froze. He turned his head towards Zara like a creaking door that hadn't been oiled in ages. By then, Ava joined the two of them. She noticed the smile on Zara's face and Neo's frozen face. What happened? I was just praising Neo. He has been training non-stop for weeks without any sleep or food. Is that surprising? He has always been a hard worker. Yeah, he is working quite hard, and putting his all into it. Neo almost wanted to groan. Maybe it would have been better if he didn't try to lie in the first place. He could only ignore Zara's coy smile, and send his intent clone back to patrol before Zara could comment again. How much more time will your training take? Ava questioned as Neo was leaving. I wanted to ask for pointers for water affinity from Elizabeth. Quote ellipsis dot. It will take some time, I think. Chapter 450 Strongest Shadow Concept. Neo in Elizabeth's room. Neo used water element to clean himself and the room, then took out some clothes from his shadow space. Elizabeth was resting on the bed. Can you help me with something? Neo asked. What can I do? Elizabeth asked endearingly. Neo felt something rise when he saw her body covered by the sheet, with only her soft shoulders visible. But he controlled himself. I wanted to train space affinity. You have space. I don't, but I was thinking if I could use shadow to mimic it. Elizabeth nodded. She had space affinity, and her main field of mastery in it was gravity. While she couldn't do things like teleportation or create portals, she could create black holes and gravity wells. I doubt you want to learn gravity. If it's high mastery spatial movement that you want to learn, I don't know it myself. But if it's only low mastery stuff, I can teach that, she explained. She sat up straight with a serious expression. The sheet slid off her, revealing her naked body. Neo's attention was involuntarily drawn towards her. He had to admit, Elizabeth was perfect. Her chest wasn't comically large, nor was it small. Her muscles were soft and firm. Her perfectly toned physique, her thin waist that accentuated the gentle curve of her hips, and the smooth, soft skin made her too enticing for Neo. Fuck, why am I thinking about only her looks? Think about her personality. Personality. It's the insides that matter. Inside her. His thoughts moved on a tangent. I wonder if I can get her to wear a bunny costume. By now, he was starting to realize he might just be as big of a pervert as Daniel and Moon. No, I'm normal compared to them. Neo. Elizabeth called out to him, unsure of his internal thoughts. Her clueless expression was cute, which was a devilish combo with her succubus-like appearance. My aim isn't spatial movements or gravity. I want the spatial perception that comes with space affinity mastery. Quote ellipsis question mark quote. Neo calmed his thoughts. He had to focus on the issue at hand. Look at this. He used his shadow affinity. The shadows inside the room came alive. They slithered like snakes, and an ominous presence seemed to descend upon the room. My concept of shadow is, all shadow. It means all shadows are one. The source of the voice came from behind. She turned around and noticed Neo there. He had teleported instantly. The speed of teleportation was so quick Elizabeth had not been able to perceive it. Had he not spoken, he could have decapitated her before she could locate him. Since all shadows are one, I can move through them and go anywhere there is a shadow. All shadow could have meant a lot of things. Copying any technique instantly, creating shadows of his opponents, or maybe something else. For Neo, all shadow worked as a movement ability. He believed his affinity evolved into this concept as he used his shadow element mostly for shadow jump, which was a movement-based spell. Isn't that too absurd? Not really. While I did say I can go anywhere, it needs to be within my perceivable environment. His words were shocking. Currently, he could sense anything within a 5,000-mile radius. Even peak stage 3 space element gods might not be able to cover that distance instantly. Neo was only a stage 2 being, first step heavenbreaker, and his combat power was as high as a stage 3 being. By the time he actually becomes STAGE 3, the radius of his perception would increase by several times. Wait, Elizabeth realized something she had not noticed in his words. You can move as long as that place has shadows, and it is within your perception range. Yes, I can go anywhere. So that's why you want spatial perception. Neo could enter the nightmare tree and leave it. He could leave even the abyss with his concept. He needed spatial perception for it, however. These places existed in different dimensions, and Neo couldn't sense them with his normal senses. What about time? She asked. Can you move through time too? No, not yet. Neo had time perception. Unfortunately, time perception didn't allow him to perceive the past or future. That was the domain of other time manifestations or abilities like future vision and foresight. Neo's time perception, just like most time affinity users, allowed him to sense changes in the timeline done by regressors, which meant he could perceive alternative timelines. Theoretically, he could move between alternative timelines. It needed exorbitant energy, but that wasn't a problem with him being a heavenbreaker and the moon's infinite mana blessing. The problem was something else. Alternative timelines didn't exist. Time would always erase extra timelines or combine them into one. In fact, the reason time affinity users could use pre-altered timelines through their dreams happened due to this. Timelines would be merged, and the time users could sense the merge and they would gain the memory of the alternative timeline. Through their time perception, Elizabeth thought about his concept. I don't know how or if you can perceive the past, but there is a way for you to perceive the future. If you gain a foresight ability and look into the future through it, you can use your all-shadow concept there and enter the future. Neo blinked, surprised. He hadn't thought like that. His mind churned. Wiseman's insight, the blessing he received from Sphinx, had the subskill foresight. It supposedly activated on its own and randomly at that, which was why Neo was not able to use it yet, but when it did activate, Neo could move to the future. Going to the past can help a lot, but I don't see how going to the future helps, especially when I don't have a way to return. There is a way to use your concept, Elizabeth said. What if you face an impossibly strong opponent? You cannot overcome him. Among the thousands of possible futures, there is only one where you win, but you don't know how to achieve that future. With your concept, you can enter the future where you win and skip the process. Chapter 451 Mimicry. Neo had a thoughtful look. His concept gave him the ability to essentially lock into a possible future and make it come true. He once again realized Elizabeth was a genius. She came up with an innovative use of his concept just by hearing the basic information about it. Well, while that sounds nice and all, I think we should start with space perception. Baby steps first, Neo said. Okay. Elizabeth nodded. How do I help you gain spatial perception? Just use space elemental manipulation, but at the level of low mastery. I will try to copy it with my shadow affinity. Elizabeth nodded. She turned her non-elemental energy into space elemental energy. Silver motes of light appeared around her hands. She sent them around Neo and made them encircle him. Neo watched the elementals carefully. Space affinity was powerful. It could help him in his battle against Tyr if he could use attacks like space render and black holes. He raised his hand. Shadows slithered around his fingers. Neo concentrated. What was space? The empty area before him. No. That emptiness was void. It was not space. Then, what was space? Neo imagined space as a sea of countless tiny particles. Black motes of light began to materialize above Neo's hand. They had a slight blue hue. You copied it quite fast. Elizabeth was surprised. This is just elemental manipulation. Let's try a bit more. She controlled the space elementals to compress. They resisted at first. Her masterful control condensed them into a thin line. She used that line to attack the space that was already present there. It created a line-shaped tear in the air. Neo followed her. He tried to condense the mimicked space elementals. He felt as if he was trying to put two solid objects at a single coordinate and have them overlap, which was supposed to be impossible. Unlike Elizabeth's space elementals that condensed with minor effort, his mimicked space elementals seemed to hate the idea of listening to him. Beads of sweat rolled down his face. There was a trick Neo had learned that allowed him to be better at elemental manipulation. It was how he progressed his elemental masteries to Savon High within a year. He forced his intent into the elementals. He ordered them to listen and used his ungodly willpower to break apart their will. During the shadow trial, Emma Nix taught him two types of incantations. One was harmony pathway incantations that everyone used, the other was willpower pathway incantations that those with high willpower used. Harmony pathway incantations taught awakeners to request the elementals to fulfill their demands. Oftentimes, the elementals would refuse, and magic would fail. Willpower pathway incantations forced the elementals to listen to the awakeners. It was done by forcing their thoughts into elementals and using one's willpower to bend their will. Willpower pathway was dangerous. If elementals were angered as they were forced by awakeners, they would complain to the elemental supreme. The awakeners would be punished and suffer a fate worse than death. It was why Neo never used willpower pathway incantations. The risks outweighed the gain. But what if Neo used willpower pathway incantations on the elementals he created, and not the ambient, naturally existing elementals? When one created elemental energy by turning non-elemental energy into elemental energy, it was actually done by transforming the non-elemental energy into elementals. These elementals were not sapient like naturally occurring elementals. Due to this, most didn't realize that the elemental energy they created was a cluster of elementals. However, while these elementals were not sapient, they still had instincts of their basic nature. The instincts became the reason the mimicked space was resisting Neo's control. He forced his thoughts into the elementals' minds. Since they were created by him, they were a part of him and couldn't complain to elemental supremes. As this slavery? Neo suddenly wondered. He shook his head and erased the useless thoughts. Elementals, even natural ones, weren't alive. So it wasn't slavery. Controlling the mimicked space elementals became much easier after Neo forced his thoughts into their minds. They had to listen. The bluish-black motes condensed and formed a line. Neo made the line burst, and the air-space was torn apart in the shape of a line. He was breathing heavily. His clothes were drenched in sweat. You might be quite talented in space element manipulation. Thanks for the compliment. No, I'm not giving you fake praise, Elizabeth said, noticing his expression. The thing you just did needs adept mastery of space. You reached it instantly. Her words gave Neo pause. Had he mastered mimicked space up to adept mastery? Or had he copied her technique, which showed adept mastery? Neo recalled the darkness. Words. It had asked him to use Shadow Supreme's treasure and copy what he was seeing. Thinking again, he had somehow learned dimensional shift just by watching air elementals. The feat had been so impressive that it shocked Sphinx. Is this the result of the treasure? An idea formed in his head. If I can copy what I see, what are the limits of it? He turned towards Elizabeth, slightly excited. Can you show me more space elemental manipulation techniques? Preferably of expert mastery. Elizabeth nodded. She created 2 sheets of elementals, one along the ceiling and the other on the floor. Just when Neo was wondering what she was doing, the space elementals above started to send out tiny packets of energy downwards. The elementals on the ground absorbed the packets of energy. Elementals can be broken down into smaller particles. Before Neo could complete his thoughts, an overwhelming amount of gravity smashed on top of him. He realized that whatever touched the tiny packets of energy was being pulled downwards. Looks like you can sense the subparticles that are released by space elementals, Elizabeth said. We call it graviton. Space elementals are always releasing or absorbing gravitons. Take a look at this. She changed the shape of space elementals and formed a ball. With a slight effort, she compressed the ball of space elementals into a single point. Instantly, the ball began to absorb the gravitons being released by natural space elementals. It created a powerful pull towards the point where space was compressed. It was a black hole. Of course, it was weaker than its naturally existing counterpart. But the force was enough to make Neo feel like his body's skin and cells were being forcibly pulled away. Elizabeth snapped her fingers, and the black hole disappeared. You try it now. Chapter 452 Innovative Ideas. Neo followed what he had seen. He commanded the mimicked space elementals to condense into a point. They resisted at first, but with his intent directly bending their will, they had no choice. The space twisted. A tiny hole appeared in the air, and it began to exert a force of pull on everything around it. Neo was left drenched in sweat. He had done it. He created a black hole after seeing it once. How is it? He turned around and noticed Elizabeth meditating on the bed. She was wearing clothes, her hair was combed, and the scent of fresh roses covered her. Had she taken a bath and dressed after that? I would have liked to see that. No, I meant to say, how much time has passed that she changed clothes and started meditating. It's okay, Neo, he heard a chuckle within his mind. I won't judge you. There is no need to give excuses in your mind. Besides, I saw everything already. Me too. And, damn, it was hot. I knew it was a good choice to help you open up to your true desires. Neo wanted to massage his brows. It didn't look like Obidus and Artemis had any intention of sparing him from the embarrassment. Neo. Elizabeth opened her eyes. Her gaze flickered towards the dissipating black hole before landing back on Neo. You learned it quite fast. It has only been 8 hours. 8 hours. Neo's brows furrowed. I can copy anything I can see. The higher rank techniques need more time to copy. He could not use black hole for battle yet. Not only was it weak, the space elementals serving as its base were constantly fluctuating. There was limit to how much they could be forced. He would need to train a lot more to use the black hole without willpower incantation pathway, then train more to bring its mastery to a level usable in battle. Can you use space perception now? I can. Though it has its downsides with shadow element. Quote. The space perception of space affinity users is activated passively. It's like how my death warning works. But with mimicked space elementals, I need to actively create mimicked space elementals and use them for space perception at all times. If my concentration breaks, I lose access to space perception, he explained. I see. Elizabeth nodded with a thoughtful expression. Neo's insights were quite helpful for her too. How long will it take before you can use the space perception without having to actively divide your focus for it and do it passively instead? It shouldn't take much time, honestly. I'm already used to dividing my focus between 2 tasks. The only problem is that I have a single body. If I'm creating mimicked space elementals, I can't create other elementals. Neo could use his intent clone for this, but it was impossible to bring a clone everywhere. It would create another set of nuisances. What if I use intent to create just the core instead of a whole body? I can use the extra core to generate mimicked space elementals. The idea, while good, was beyond his current limits. For Neo, his intent clone's body was a single construct. The bones, the flesh, the organs, the core, the nervous system. Everything was one, not different objects. This reason was why he could create a whole clone with intent and yet found it impossible to create only a hand from intent. Or maybe I can use all shadow to create a core made from shadow elementals and use it to create mimicked space. In the shadow world, everyone was made from shadow elementals. Neo wondered if he could do the same. Basic shadow elemental manipulation allowed one to mimic elements. Anything else belonged to a higher realm of mastery, namely concepts. My concept of shadow is all shadow. It's a movement ability concept. But if I can change the implementation, can I use shadows to create other objects? All shadows meant all shadows were one. Technically, Neo should be able to use it to do anything a shadow could do. After all, if all shadows were one, and a shadow can be used to create a human, why couldn't his shadow do the same? Changing implementation is anything but easy though. Percival took days to change his implementation of overwhelming might to overwhelming speed, and this was when he knew his concept of overwhelming inside out. I haven't learned everything about my movement-based implementation, so applying a new implementation would be hard. Just then, a thought struck Neo. Elizabeth, gravity is your concept, right? Yes. Is there anything wrong with it? Aren't you surprised I copied your element's concept so easily? Can other shadow users do the same? I was surprised. After all, I haven't fought many shadow users, so I can't say it with certainty, but my master taught me that shadow users can copy only elements. Copying masteries was only possible in theory, and no one had done it yet. Neo nodded. It must have been the Shadow Supreme's treasure that allowed him to copy her concept. This confirms my goal. I need to keep trying to use intent to create a core and try to see if I can do it with all shadow too. Even if I can't do it with both of them, I need to find a shadow user who has a. Then I can copy him and learn his concept. Having multiple cores would give him an unreasonable advantage over others. He would be able to create different elementals without any delay or lowering the production. To explain, if a core had fixed value of 100, it could create 100 units of death elemental at once or create 50 units of death and 50 units of darkness together, or create 100 units of death for 1 second and create 100 units of death the next second. Neo could overcome this limitation if he could create multiple cores. He would even be able to use spells together with his elemental manipulation attacks. Something he was not yet able to do, and had forced him to lower the usage of his spells. Chapter 453 Illogical Demand. I was not looking at the bigger picture until now. After hearing Elizabeth talk about the time use of his all-shadow, Neo realized he had been too straightforward in his approach. He needed to be innovative. Brashly swinging a sword covered in death and darkness could only take him so far. Gaining enlightenment through hard work was good, but if he could add innovation to the recipe, his arsenal of abilities would grow tremendously. Neo's biggest advantage was his high mastery of several elements. And he had been very basic in their uses until now. Should we continue? Elizabeth asked. I can show you more techniques if you want. Please do. Neo erased the unnecessary thoughts and focused on the task at hand. He wanted to see the limits of the treasure given by Shadow Supreme. How much could it copy? Can you create a clone? Okay. Neo answered, unsure of the reason. A clone materialized before Neo and Elizabeth. Elizabeth controlled the space elementals to form a sphere around the clone. The space elementals released gravitons, and the space elementals at the opposite side of the sphere absorbed them. There was no uniformity within the sphere. At some places, a group of space elementals was releasing gravitons, while just next to it, gravitons were being absorbed. The gravity within the sphere became chaotic. It crushed the clone and kept crushing it until it was nothing but a cube of flesh made from intent. Neo felt a shiver down his spine. Couldn't you have gone easier on it? It might not be me, but it looks like me. Why would I go easier on it? This is to help you understand the technique. If I hold back, the movements of space elementals would be weaker, and you wouldn't be able to understand the full extent of the technique. Besides, as you said, it was not you. Neo could only swallow his complaints in front of her logical answer. He created another clone. When he was about to start, Elizabeth stopped him. Don't use the limited domain on the clone. That was a domain. You can reduce it to such a small size. I can, but that's beside the point. So, why can't I use the limited domain on the clone? It looks like you. Neo was baffled. It was fine if she hurt his clone, but he couldn't do that. Where was the logic in it? Before he could say anything, Elizabeth opened her mouth. Here, take this. Elizabeth threw the bottle she picked up from the table. Neo gave her a confused stare before eventually nodding. He created a sphere of space elementals around it. Few days earlier. Tyr's room. Tyr's nightmare world. The young dragon opened his eyes with slight discomfort. He sat up and stared at his body with a confused gaze. His limbs and torso were bandaged, along with his forehead. I woke up. I thought the concept father used was eternal sleep. I did that. He turned his head toward the source of the voice. His elder sister stood there. I apologize for not being able to greet you when you came, elder sister. Don't mind it. Zara looked at Tyr with a complex gaze. He had always trained himself hard. But this time, Neo and he went beyond the limit. Tyr had been converting his life force into energy to supply energy to truth during the fight. Had the fight continued for longer, Tyr could have been in danger. If his consciousness dies here, it could put him in a coma, or at worse, kill him. Death of the mind was always a touchy topic. It was entirely possible Tyr wouldn't revive even with Tartarus, unforgiving immortality. How did you break father's concept of eternal sleep, elder sister? Why are you asking about that? I need to prepare countermeasures for our clash that would happen in the championship. Zara thought about it and decided to be honest. I used void. Quote ellipsis question mark quote. I corrupted the concept that was forcing you to sleep, and it broke apart after decaying completely. I see. Tyr nodded with a thoughtful expression. Broke apart and decayed. He pulled the sheet to the side and tried to stand. The pain made him wince. His body had been damaged beyond repair, and since he burned his life force during the battle, his natural recovery had been slow. You need to wait until your life force recovers. I won't have the time to train if I wait. Tyr walked out of the room. He had been adamant about his decision, and Zara could not stop him. A thought suddenly came to him while he was on the way. Elder sister could break father's concept. Had she always been this strong? The dissonance of his father and sister's strength and personality bugged him. His eyes became hazy, and he stopped. A few seconds later, his eyes returned to normal, and he resumed the walk, forgetting the dissonance. However, the repeated logical errors he noticed had left their mark on his mind. Unknown to everyone, the world of nightmare was changing again. Few days earlier. Throne room, the room beyond the door that suddenly appeared, Tyr's nightmare world. Darkness covered the room. The presence in the room was unsettling. It wasn't just the absence of light, it was as if something evil and malevolent was hiding. Within the darkness suddenly shifted. The man sitting on the throne opened his eyes. He was devilishly handsome. His hair, black as midnight, cascaded over his shoulders, and his eyes glowed the color of blood. His dragon-like hand rested casually under his chin. Present. Neo in Elizabeth's room, Tyr's nightmare world. Ha. Ha. Neo plopped on the seat. He spent days trying to copy Elizabeth's limited domain, and he still couldn't use it properly. The treasure lets me copy any element and its mastery up to expert rank. After that, I need to put in some effort. He was not discouraged. It was already shocking he could deploy mimic domains. Although he had to train a lot, he wasn't going to complain about such a useful boon. Chapter 454 Clan Leader of Metal Dragon Clan. I will try it again. Neo stood up. He was about to start practicing when Elizabeth called out to him. Neo, I can tap into your world energy reserves, right? Yes. How? Worlds can choose their inhabitants as their avatars. They can give some of their powers to their avatars and control their bodies. I think you became my avatar when I gave you a world connection. I can't pass you my abilities or control your body, but I can give you energy as much as you want, he explained. I see. Why are you asking about it? I was wondering if I could use your energy reserves to fight opponents above my rank. Quote ellipsis dot question mark quote. My elemental mastery is supreme, mid, and it's reaching supreme, high. It makes me enough to fight all opponents on the same rank as me and win. I can't fight those that have a higher rank since my stats and energy reserves fall short. But if you use my energy reserves, you might be able to match a high-ranked opponent. Elizabeth nodded. She would still be unable to jump ranks for a physical fight. However, a battle involving spells and elementals was possible. Let's try it, Neo told her. We should know the limit of your combat strength in your avatar form. They decided to name it as avatar form, while she would be using his energy reserves. While training together, Neo tried to copy Elizabeth's water element concept. Tyrant allowed her to take control of water, whether created by her or others. Neo almost said why her concept was so weak. He held himself back at the last second when he realized what he was going to say. Elizabeth, however, must have realized his thoughts by seeing his expression. She told him she would use her concept on him. And it was a nauseating experience. She could use her concept to control the water within his body. Neo had elemental resistances he gained from Earth, then his own elemental resistances gained due to his body having a condensed mass of energy within him that rejected any outside energy being injected inside him. Her concept should not have worked on him due to his high elemental resistance. That was when he realized Elizabeth's concept was highly specialized to take control over others' water, which was why his resistance couldn't help much. It was like armor-piercing rounds. What's the point of resistance if it can be pierced so easily? Or maybe there is another way to protect myself from these attacks. Neo experimented more with Elizabeth's concept. Weeks passed while both were training, and it was time for the championship battle. They met up with the others in the central hall. It had an arena in the center. Neo noticed that other than him, Elizabeth, Tyr, Zara, and Ava, there was no one in the arena. I thought there would be more people here since this is a championship, Elizabeth questioned. Nightmare worlds are never an exact copy of the real world. They would include only the important bits, which in our case is the battle between Tyr and Tyr's father. Turning his head, he noticed Tyr sitting at the waiting area with a subdued expression on his face. He held a note in his hand and kept staring at it. Neo approached Zara, who stood near Tyr. What's wrong with him? He looks different. We might not have to defeat him to break this nightmare world. Quote ellipsis dot question mark quote. Go and speak with him. You will understand what I'm talking about. Neo was confused. Had something changed during the time he was training with Elizabeth? Tyr raised his head when Neo came to him. Father, what did you want to talk about? Tyr's eyes scanned Neo's physique. He smiled bitterly, a rare expression on his face that only ever showed irritation or remained impassive. You've grown quite strong in just 2 months. Even if we were going to fight, I don't think I would have won. You are giving up. Yes, Tyr said. You've grown so much stronger while I couldn't even train. What? My life energy took a lot of time to recover. Time I used to think, and realized something was wrong. He showed the piece of paper to Neo. Greater than wake up. Less than. I don't remember writing this, but I'm sure I'm the one who wrote this. How have you not forgotten this yet? Forgotten what? That something is wrong. I think it's because I don't really understand what is actually happening, and according to elder sister, when I was defeated by you, some of the restrictions lifted. Neo nodded. Restrictions lifted was another way of saying the hold of the nightmare world over Tyr's subconscious mind was weakening. Show me the reality. What are you planning to do now? Neo asked. I want to know what is happening here. I want to know the truth. His words called forth a burst of strange light. It covered his whole body and rapidly spread to cover the palace around them. Show me the reality. Power exploded. Literally. It attacked the world and warped it. In those moments, Tyr's figure began to change. His gloomy eyes became filled with irritation and confusion. Listen, you lots. Fight that. Tyr looked around. Huh, where is this? I was just commanding the grand expedition. Damn it, did I get caught by a teleportation trap? A sudden pain tore through his head. He clutched his forehead. Nightmare. Caught. Grand expedition not true. He seemed in immense pain. Just then, the palace disappeared. They appeared in an empty vast space and could see countless black holes, visual representations of nightmare worlds present inside the nightmare tree. Tyr was drenched in sweat. His body was shivering, and his eyelids were on the verge of closing down. You brought back your active consciousness? Neo questioned, surprised. He had underestimated the clan leader of the Weapon Dragon clan. Before Tyr could respond, the space trembled. The destroyed world of nightmare was restored with a snap. Snap. Everyone swiftly turned towards the doors of the hall. The sound of footsteps was eerily haunting. Neo's blood began to boil as if it recognized the one walking towards them. Chapter 455 God of Death and the Judge Who Follows Justice. Tyr was no longer conscious. Ava and Elizabeth prepared to fight. Zara had her world at the tips of her fingers, ready to deploy it at a moment's notice. But Neo remained still. He recognized that presence and the intent. He finally understood who was behind the door that appeared weeks ago. The entrance of the arena opened, and the man, the god, with a familiar appearance walked in. Long black hair, blood-red eyes, arms covered in dragon scales, and 2 horns over his head. Why do you look so surprised? The man spoke. Death seemed to hum with a single word of his. Is this not what you expected? No one could move. The man's presence and death bore down on them like a predator looking at its prey. Zara was the same as Neo. She recognized the man. What are you doing here? She asked him. I am the owner of Tartarus. Answering her, he walked towards Neo, who had yet to say anything. Why are you not speaking, Hargraves? Or are you still trying to verify the authenticity of my identity with intent? Neo opened his mouth and closed it. Words would not come out. He finally met him. There was a lot he wanted to say. There was a lot he had planned to say. But he never thought they would meet under these circumstances. Dad? Neo asked, still doubting if this was reality. What if this was a part of the nightmare? I'm not a part of the nightmare. You should be able to sense that with your nightmare affinity. Neo nodded. There was more. His death was ringing like alarms. It was warning him to run away. To escape. The god before him was strong, and he was going to kill them all. There was no way for them to win. They had to escape. Neo ignored the warning of death and opened his mouth. Why are you using Tartarus to do this? I'm punishing evildoers. There is nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. This world is pulling innocent darkness users. There is no innocent darkness user. The man spoke with eerie calmness. They have eaten others for their powers. Where is innocence in that? So have I, and you too. Neo's voice came out a pitch higher than he would have liked. His emotions were jumbled. He didn't know how to feel about this encounter. I'm a god. I am the one who judges, not the one who is judged. What? The arrogance behind the man's words left Neo stunned. He doubted his own ears. The god who the Grim Reapers had sworn their loyalty to, the god who was called the incarnation of justice, the father he had always wanted to meet, was this. Make no mistake, Neo. Being arrogant is not what makes one wrong. Being weak does that. Arrogance is the right of the strong. Neo felt nauseous. They had spoken for less than 1 minute. It was enough for him to hate the man. Why are you here? He spoke through his gritted teeth. I am here to take back what belongs to me. Quote ellipsis question mark quote. You have given up on being a judge. You are no longer my successor. Neo felt a stinging pain in his chest. He looked down with intent vision and noticed Hades' hand had pierced his chest. It grabbed the blessings and ripped them out. A sudden wave of weakness washed over Neo. He lost the boost of elemental manipulation, stat multiplier, and the healing. But the man acted too fast for him to react. He held the blessings within his fist, and his other hand shot out and grabbed Neo's neck. Now that I have taken what belongs to me, there is no need to entertain you anymore. What the fuck are you talking about? Neo tried to pry open the man's hand. However, his body wouldn't listen to him. The loss of blessings left him weak and disoriented. His own healing wasn't enough to close the gaping hole in his chest, and Hades was using something to weaken him further. A mistake like you does not have the right to hold the name of Hargraves. So what? Neo spat. I don't like impartial death, and I will never accept it. That's why you will die here. Try it. I'm immortal, and I'm the god of death. Neo's vision went dark. Hades devoured his body and soul. He let go of his hold over time and looked towards Zara, Ava, and Elizabeth. Where is Neo? Elizabeth asked. It took her only a split second to realize Hades had done something in the moment where he had frozen time. She was about to move when a hand stopped her. Don't. Zara couldn't stop her hand from shivering. The time freeze had stopped her too. It shouldn't have been possible. She had the protection of Void, and hardly anyone at the same rank as her could affect her. Even if they stopped time, she would remain unaffected. But that was not what happened now. There was only one explanation. He is far stronger than me. Beads of sweat fell from her chin. They could not win. The man was too strong. He had not acted until now as the rules of the nightmare forbade him from direct interference. Destroying the nightmare world broke his shackles and allowed him to run wild. I will give you 2 choices. The man raised his fingers. Die here, or repent in the nightmares until your natural end. Hades, you should. Where is Neo? Elizabeth spoke over Zara. What did you do to him? He was a blemish on the name of Hargraves. I merely delivered the punishment for it. What? Ours is the family of supremes. Cowards like him who reject their destiny have no right to live. I might have forgiven him if he had some worth. But to be as untalented as he was even with the bloodline of Hargraves. That wouldn't be tolerated. Chapter 456 Fate of Fortune Thread. 5 days earlier, in real time. Percival stared at the grand expedition entering the tornado, the mouth of the abyss of nightmares. He steadied his heart and followed them. A shift occurred. He felt the sensation of teleportation, and his feet were about to touch the ground when something yanked at him. The space around him twisted. Powerful turbulence appeared. Percival's fate affinity activated. Thousands, if not tens of thousands, of threads appeared in Percival's vision. Among them, one golden thread was pulling him, stopping him from reaching the abyss. A green and red thread were tangled around that golden thread. The red thread was about to break the green thread, but the golden thread was mediating them. Percival could sense it. If he reached the abyss, the green thread, the one depicting the fate of life, would be broken by the red thread, the fate of death. The golden thread, his fate of fortune, summoned a dark bluish thread. It snapped, unable to handle the strain. As the protection of the fate of fortune thread disappeared, the fate of death thread attacked the fate of life thread. Just in time, the dark bluish thread wrapped around the fate of life thread and whisked it away. All of this had taken less than a fraction of a second. After the fate of life thread was teleported away, the space around Percival warped. A jarring shift occurred. The turbulent space elementals ripped apart his body. Percival felt an ungodly amount of pain searing through him. It took him his all to remain clear-headed. He could not lose consciousness before seeing where he was being teleported. The shift completed. His body fell on cold dirt ground. He forced his hands to support himself against the ground and tried to stand. His limbs quivered. Bloody cuts had appeared over his body due to the teleportation by uncontrolled space elementals. It had been no different from throwing his body in a wormhole. If his fate of fortune thread had not sacrificed itself to grant him a safe passage, he would have been ripped to shreds by the uncontrolled space elementals before the teleportation completed. Where am I? Apollo tried to stand. His body refused, and he fell to the ground. Blood pooled beneath him, but the worst was the leaking divine energy. My core. It was partially destroyed. His divine energy was leaking from his body, and soon his rank would start falling. Why? A single thought appeared in Apollo's mind. Why did my fate of fortune thread sacrifice itself to do this to me? The fate of fortune thread would keep him safe and bring him good luck. Every fate affinity user had a chance to create a fate of fortune thread for themselves. If they could then manipulate the fate of fortune thread, they would gain the title of Fateweavers. The fate of fortune thread was needed to interact with threads of other fates. It had protected Percival's fate of life thread and sacrificed itself to use a fate of space thread, which opened a natural wormhole and teleported him. The fate of fortune thread only took such drastic measures when his life was in danger. He had seen the fate of death attack his fate of life thread. It would have broken his fate of life thread the moment he stepped into the abyss of nightmare. In other words, he would have died inside the abyss of nightmare. I'm going to die, with these injuries either way. He struggled to his feet. Why had his fate of fortune thread thrown him here? It wouldn't leave him to die slowly. That would be no different from the end he would face inside the abyss of nightmare. Look around. There has to be a solution. Percival's hazy eyes noticed a gigantic tree in front of him. The tree had an ominous presence, and its branches stretched beyond the sky. He tried to use healing and continued to fail actively. This is useless. He looked up at the sun. Sunshine had appeared long ago by its own volition. It was only thanks to sunshine that he had not yet died. His feet continued to move, and he reached the end of the island. The blood sea spread before him. He tried to take flight and failed spectacularly. His wings of light broke before he crashed into the ground. His thoughts grew hazy, and his mind became numb. His pulse slowed to a halt. He could hear his thumping heart dying out. The sense of touch disappeared. He could no longer feel the blood pooling beneath him. The senses of smell and taste followed. The smell of blood no longer stung his nose, and the coppery taste of blood vanished. The sense of sight failed him. Darkness began to cloud his vision. Just before his hearing met the same fate, he heard the sound of dirt crunching underneath a foot, and a familiar human voice soon followed. This place brings back memories. It's as disgusting as ever. The source of the voice seemed to be looking around. Percival felt he saw silver white hair appear in his failing vision. Now, I came here since I felt the pull of fate. What caused it? Oh, who are you? She crouched before him. And Percival saw it. A face he had seen a lot of times. A face every demigod hated on Luminara. Eliza. Beth. The Tyrant. Ellipsis. Julie de Beaufort-Pauv. Julie crouched before the unconscious Percival. She had silver white hair, blood-red eyes, and a playful smirk rested on her lips. Did you call me just because you were dying? Do you know how precious my time is? Should I kill you for disturbing me? The energy in the sky exploded outwards. Intense heat surged, causing the air to light on fire. Julie turned to look at the cause of the commotion, the sun in the sky. Quiet down a little bit. Or do you want me to leave your master without treating him? The sunshine's momentum faltered. It considered the woman's words and eventually called back its threatening aura. Good boy. She smiled before returning her attention to Percival. Chapter 457 Julie de Beaufort. Now, what should I do with you? Normally, she would have killed him. However, the name he muttered made her dwell on her actions. Let's decide it by a coin toss. I will take heads. She took out a golden coin from her pocket. The coin shone dimly, having seen her twisted, fair coin tosses in the past. She flicked it in the air and caught it. A slight surprise appeared in her gaze when she saw the result. You are quite lucky. First, you call me to save you, and then you win this too. The coin itself was surprised. The toss was no gamble. Only those who met the strictest of conditions could win. They had to be people with the ability to join the resistance. Or someone who would help Julie in the future, or in the past, directly or perhaps indirectly. They would lose the coin toss if they failed to meet the conditions. A green sheen covered her hand. She gave a twist, and the time of Percival's body started to flow backward. The fallen blood returned to his veins, the broken core repaired, and his pale face regained its color. After healing him, Julie decided to wait for him to wake up. However, her ringing wristwatch made a mess of her plan. She stood up with an unpleasant expression and sighed. How do they always find me so fast? She took a look at Percival and shook her head. I guess I won't have time to meet you. She disappeared just as suddenly as she had appeared, leaving behind not a single trace of her existence. Even the memories of her appearance were erased from the mind of Sunshine and Percival. Ellipsis. Percival's paw. His eyes snapped open. The sudden movement caused pain to flare through his limbs, and an involuntary cry left his lips. The pain brought a realization. He was alive. His divine energy reserves were at rock bottom. His repaired core was the only saving grace. He was not dying, at least. He pushed himself up with a groan. The pain made him feel like thousands of ants were biting into his limbs. Ow, it hurts. How long was I asleep for? Percival looked around. He was on a small island, and at the center of it was a giant tree. The tree was large and thick. Percival suspected its height was 3 times the diameter of a stage -1 planet. Its width was not as gargantuan. Only as wide as a country like Auburn. The tree took most of the space on the island, leaving only a few hundred meters worth of land before the Blood Sea began. Where is this place? Am I even in Tartarus? Wings of light formed behind his back. He took to the skies as he flew over the Blood Sea. He did not go much farther as he knew the dangers of the Blood Sea. However, he never felt a pull from the island. Tartarus was supposed to stop anyone from leaving. Since this island did nothing similar, it was not Tartarus. Sunshine, what happened here, and how was I healed? The emotions and the voice of the sun appeared in his head. A frown appeared on Percival's visage upon hearing its answer. You don't know how I was healed. Strange. I don't remember it either. The last thing he could recall was the fate of Fortune Thread teleporting him somewhere to preserve his life. Do you know where I am, at least? He waited for its answer. Yeah, I guess I should use Goddess Artemis' blessing to check that. Silver motes of light appeared around him when he thought of Tartarus' location. The path of light led to the giant tree. A frown appeared on Percival's face. Is something interfering with the Goddess Artemis' blessing? Let's try something else. I want to locate Olivia von Villiers. The path of light still led towards the tree. Percival tried to find the senator, then Neo, and finally Elizabeth. Every time, the path of light was pointing towards the tree. As the blessing not working, he scratched his head in confusion. An idea suddenly came to him, and he spoke. Tell me the location of the ship we used to travel through the Blood Sea and come to Tartarus. The path of lights changed. It went around the tree and to the other side of the island. Percival's heart hammered against his chest. Initially, he believed this place had something that interfered with the blessing. But if the ship's location was correct, the blessing must be working correctly. That meant the tree was where everyone was present. They are inside that tree. Did it swallow them? A sudden thought came to Percival. After coming to the borders of Tartarus on the ship, they had torn open a barrier and entered it. Was that barrier the tree? Did they unknowingly enter it? What the hell is this place? This world was one of a kind. Percival had never seen a world like this. No, was it even a world? The land was small, and it had a single tree. Percival was starting to question everything that had happened until now. I should check the ship's location first. If the ship isn't here, then that means my assumptions are wrong. He moved through the island at quick speed. Although he was feeling weak, something told him he did not have much time left. He used divine transformation, spirit form, and merged with sunshine temporarily. The boost allowed him to cover the distance within a few seconds. The ship was resting against the shore. Percival cancelled the divine transformation. His body was drenched in sweat, and heavy exhaustion pressed over him. Nonetheless, his focus was on the ship. It was there. So this is the actual Tartarus, and we were inside that tree until now. I suspect so. Goddess Artemis. Percival was shocked when the status screen spoke to him. There is no need to be shocked. I'm not the true Artemis, but a mere projection of her. I see. Percival nodded, knowing the blessing of Goddess Artemis within him was speaking. Are you sure the others are inside the tree? That is what my abilities tell me. However, I cannot guarantee, for I am unable to connect to my sister projections that are with your fellow executioners. Percival had a grave expression. His worries only increased when he saw the next words of Artemis. You need to hurry. There is not much time left. Chapter 458 Fate Vision. Quote ellipsis question mark quote. Look at the threads of fate surrounding the tree. You will know what I am talking about. The blessing returned to silence after giving him a warning. Percival approached the tree in haste. In the hundreds of years he had the blessing of Goddess Artemis, she only spoke to him 2 times. Each time, he had managed to avert a great disaster with her warnings. There is not much time left. He believed the words of the goddess of purity. After calming his nerves, he focused inwards. His fate of fortune thread had snapped. It reduced his ability to sense the threads of fate. I don't need the fate of fortune thread to sense the threads of fate surrounding the tree. But it's best if I build the fate of fortune thread first. This situation is already confusing as is. Getting half-baked information because I did not have the fate of fortune thread will only make things difficult for me. Golden light began to converge on Percival. His body shuddered. The fate of fortune thread, once broken or lost, was nearly impossible to get back. It was believed that once one lost their fate of fortune thread, they had run out of good luck. Percival was one of the anomalies who could build a new fate of fortune thread. He had to learn it, since his fate of fortune threads would snap when his reincarnations died. The power of fate converged into Percival. He tried to condense it into the shape of a thread. The fate of fortune thread was created by converging all the threads of your good luck. Each person would have countless threads of fate. Some about their future, some about their past, some about their accidents, some about their success. Among them, one had to gather all good threads of fate and condense them into one. Doing such would create a fate of fortune thread that would protect them from disasters and bring them good luck. It was several times more effective than multiple normal good threads of fate. Good luck could be used to bring him fortuitous encounters or avert calamities, just like how Percival used his fate of fortune thread to escape the abyss of nightmares. However, this was where the problem appeared. If one used their good threads to create a fate of fortune thread, they would have no good threads left. Then, once they lose their fate of fortune thread, they could never create another, as they had no good threads to use as materials. Percival was slightly different in this case. One of his trait skills, fate vision, allowed him to see the fate threads of the parallel him. He did not understand how it worked. Parallel him meant the him in alternate timelines. Alternate timelines did not exist. Time did not allow it. In other words, the parallel him did not exist. Nevertheless, his fate vision showed him the fate threads of the parallel hymns. Percival never understood how his trait could do that. How could he observe something that did not exist? Percival shook his head. This was no time to waste on useless thoughts. He looked at the parallel hymns. Some were too strong, and he could not interfere with them. It might bring a backlash. Among the infinite parallels, he picked a weaker parallel. That parallel him never awakened God blood and lived a normal life. Percival gave a sweeping glance at his life. Due to the difference in strength, he could read his entire fate and knew how the life would have played out for the parallel him. He did not waste his time on sentiments of such a mundane, yet happy life. After all, it was a life where happiness was born out of ignorance. He took over the good fate threads of the parallel him and used them to create a new fate of fortune thread for himself. Had those parallel hymns been real, Percival might have hesitated. He was essentially robbing them of all manners of good luck. But they were not real. They did not exist. He felt no remorse or emotions for taking their fortune. Hours rolled by, and Percival was successful in creating a fate of fortune thread. This isn't quite as strong as my previous one, but this will do for now. He stopped focusing inwards and spread his fate affinity outwards, toward the giant tree in the distance. The golden fate of fortune thread of his shone like a lighthouse in a stormy sea. It illuminated the emptiness and revealed countless threads of fate hiding within. He did not find anything wrong. Maybe I should check inside. Percival tried to enter the tree but was met with obstruction. He controlled his fate of fortune thread to look for an opening. Time was jumbled in the sea of threads. Years had gone by for Percival when, in reality, only a moment had passed. He finally found a gap. Tiny, but wide enough. His fate of fortune thread squeezed through the gap between the net of countless threads of fate. Inside, he saw a whole new world of threads of fate open up before him. Fate of devouring threads were in abundance. They were feasting on each other. Percival realized this was the world, the Tartarus, he had seen before. This was the world where he met with the Sword Saint Cain and Dragon Clan leaders. So it was a world within the tree. He continued his search for the something. Goddess Artemis had told him time was short. That something there was wrong. He saw several areas without powerful fate threads. He steered clear of those areas and continued his search. After finding nothing for hours, his fate of fortune thread floated in the emptiness above. Do I need to approach the places with dangerous fate to see what Goddess Artemis was warning me about? He looked at the world of fate threads below. Going to those areas was. His thoughts suddenly stopped. He took another look at the fate threads below, and he finally understood what Goddess Artemis' warning had entailed. Chapter 459, A Twisted Hell. The threads of fate were far lower than what a world with trillions of inhabitants should have. It was as if only a few 100,000 lived there. How is this possible? A chill ran down his spine. How can a world like this exist? Percival focused downwards. He noticed a withering fate thread moving around something invisible. At first, he had not paid attention, but the more he focused, the more he realized something was wrong. Where were the fate threads of the trillions of Tartarus inhabitants? Why could he not see them? What if there are no inhabitants? A bold conjecture appeared in Percival's mind. He looked around for clues to support his theory. To his horror, the more he saw, the more he was sure of his guess. Tartarus had no inhabitants. They were mirages. Illusions. Percival's heart thumped loudly. He started to piece together the clues he had seen. The world inside the Tartarus tree is a nightmare. No, this place isn't a world. It was never a world. We thought of it as a world since it could give energy connection to the inhabitants, but there were never any inhabitants. They were all part of an illusion created to trick those who were caught by Tartarus and trapped here. He clutched his head. Monsters. Sentient species. Dragon Clan members. Dragon Clan leaders. How many of them were illusions created to trick those who were caught by Tartarus? This damned place. Percival could feel his mouth go dry. Ava Williams. The daughter of Sword Saint Cain Williams. She was born on Tartarus. In other words, she was an illusion too. Apollo had heard Cain was called the Great Disaster. Cain had attacked the Grand Expedition and stopped them from conquering Tartarus. He did that because if Tartarus was conquered, the people would see the truth, and they might remove the illusions, one of which happens to be his daughter. Percival bit his lips. He might be going a bit too far with his theory. But he felt his assumptions were correct. The worst realization was the fact that the illusions didn't know they were illusions. They seemed to think of themselves as real people. Percival continued to look around. The world of fate had distorted time. It allowed him to make observations for years when, in reality, only a few seconds had gone by. The long time he spent there brought disturbing facts to light. These illusions are created with the power of nightmare. Percival did not know when it happened, but a new prisoner was caught by Tartarus in the Blood Sea and brought within. That person's fate of life thread was only a bit larger than their fate of devouring thread. Whenever someone's fate of devouring thread became larger than their fate of life thread, they would become insane due to darkness. The new prisoner was on the verge of falling into madness. He was killed and revived, killed and revived. He killed others, devoured them, and he grew stronger. He killed others, devoured them, and grew stronger. He was killed and revived. He killed others, devoured them, and grew stronger. The new prisoner's life was monotonous. Despite being bestowed Tartarus, immortality, he had to keep struggling for survival. And it showed Percival another horror of Tartarus. Each time the man died and revived, his fate of devouring thread grew slightly larger. But this growth was not a problem. The fate of devouring thread was warping around the fate of life thread. When the fate of devouring grew large enough, it completely covered the fate of life thread. It was the same for every other prisoner of Tartarus. Their fate of life thread was completely covered by their fate of devouring thread. Does this mean darkness grew so strong that it devoured their life? Percival had never seen anything of the sort before. No, if they are dead, how are they moving and behaving like living? Percival closed his mouth. Were those prisoners alive? Could he say with guarantee that they were alive? Their fate of life thread was eaten by the fate of devouring thread. So, were they corpses who were moving as if they were alive? Are they dead and are being forcefully moved like puppets by Tartarus, or are they alive? Percival hoped it was not the former. Decades passed in the world of fate threads. Percival could have stopped his maniacal pursuit of truth. It was harming him, slowly killing him. But he wanted to know the truth. Why was this world created like it was? What was the purpose behind it? No one had asked Percival to put his life on the line for the truth. However, he couldn't let a twisted world like this continue. How much more time passed? Percival didn't know. His spirit had become too weak. Even though he had been using infinite mana of Goddess Artemis' blessing to stay in the world of threads, there was a limit to how much his mind could expend itself to observe the fate threads. His soul fell into slumber. He woke up with a snap after an unknown amount of time. Where am I? He looked around and noticed himself to be next to the Tartarus tree. However, was this world real? Or was it another nightmare created by Tartarus? Percival began to doubt everything. For what reason was Tartarus wrapping the fate of devouring threads around their fate of life threads? For what reason had it created a twisted hell like this? You are wasting your energy and time upon futile thoughts, Sunshine's voice echoed in his mind. The years you spent in the world of threads were similarly futile. They served no purpose. What do you mean they were futile? Artemis' warning was meant to divert your attention towards your allies and help them. Have you done that? Percival had no words. He did not enter the abyss. He was too afraid to see what he would find there. Percival, it is not your nature to show weakness. Cast thy doubts from thy heart and continue moving forward. Percival looked at his own hands. He was shivering. The twisted hell he had seen left him with uncontrollable dread. People lived for years with their family. Someone proposed to their love. Someone was taking care of their child. Someone was training to join the dragon clan. But they did not know everything was an illusion, a part of a nightmare. They had no family. The life they were living was fake. The centuries of memories they created were fabricated. And they themselves might be dead and nothing but a fleeting mirage, a ghost, of their true selves. Percival's stomach churned. He vomited. He felt like he was inside a bad nightmare. A twisted joke that was created to drown people into despair when they saw its true nature. If you hate the nightmare so much, then destroy it. Sunshine spoke without any hesitation. End this twisted hell. I can't. He was afraid. He was. Are you going to leave behind your allies again? Are you going to cower in fear again just because you saw a twisted horror? Chapter 460, A Nightmare Within a Nightmare, a World Within a World. Sunshine's words stabbed deep into his heart. He did not understand what Sunshine was talking about, but those words resonated with something hiding deep within him. Are you talking about my past? I am, Sunshine said. The memories you have conveniently forgotten would have shown you how your cowardice cost us our everything. Your blind trust in that traitor is the reason why we lost our dear friends. Percival opened his mouth to ask what Sunshine was talking about. In the past, Sunshine always refused to talk about the memories of the lives Percival had forgotten. This was the first time he spoke about them. Yet, Percival kept his mouth shut and did not ask for the truth. He was not ready to face another painful reality. Save your allies, Sunshine spoke again. Do not make the same mistake twice. You would regret it in the future. The spirit's tone was solemn. It did not want to see Percival break again after he lost his allies. How am I going to do that? Percival's nails dug into his clothes. Beings stronger than me are trapped within Tartarus. The dragon god of void cannot escape it. How can I do it? It's impossible. It is. Sunshine spoke mercilessly. But bashing your head against the prison's wall to break it is better than giving into despair and not even trying to escape. Percival sat with his back against the Tartarus tree. After he was thrown out of the world that existed inside Tartarus, he was not taken in since he did not have too much negative karma. The last time, they had Neo to bring them in. Even if Percival wanted to enter, he couldn't. He had tried to use fate to interact with people and had been unsuccessful. The fate threads present in Tartarus started to attack his fate of fortune thread whenever he tried to intervene in the world. The situation had forced him to stay his hand. What should I do? Percival muttered in defeat. Thanatos. Sunshine spoke. No, perhaps I should call him Neo Hargraves. If it's him, he can overcome this twisted hell. Neo. He is strong, but nowhere near enough. This situation is impossible for someone of his level to solve. It is because the situation is hopelessly impossible that I believe he can do it. He has saved the world from certain doom. He has overturned destiny once already. If there is anyone who can conquer the impossible, it is Neo Hargraves, Sunshine said. The spirit's emotions were transmitted into Percival's mind. Trust, admiration, respect. Who is Neo Hargraves? What do you mean he has saved the world once already? That I can't answer. You would have to ask him to know the truth. Percival was in doubt. He aimlessly stared at the sky for a few seconds before he stood back to his feet. He was exhausted. He was afraid. But Sunshine was right. This was no time to cry. He had to move forward, whether it took him into the jaws of despair or the cradle of hope. Damn it, I shouldn't have taken this mission. I can't believe I'm going to get myself killed here for other people, he joked and put his hands on the Tartarus tree before he activated his fate affinity. Sunshine couldn't help but smile inwardly. Percival, Apollo, had always been the first to break under pressure. But he was also the first one to stand back on his feet. Despair could never claim him for long. Here goes nothing. Percival commanded his Fate of Fortune thread to sneak into the world of threads within the Tartarus tree. He entered without much resistance, thanks to his previous experience. The Fate of Fortune thread zipped across the world of threads and reached the entrance of the abyss. From Percival's perspective, he saw a hole that was sucking everything into itself. Fate, death, life. Everything. That is where Olivia, the senator, and Neo are. The senator and Olivia should be alive, and their fate of life thread shouldn't have been eaten by their fate of devouring thread. After all, they are fateweavers like me, and their fate of fortune thread must be protecting them. The one I'm worried about is Neo. However, seeing Sunshine's trust in him, I think it's safe to say he is alright. The world of threads changed. Percival realized his fate of fortune thread had entered another dimension. Huh, there is a giant tree here too. Percival used his fate of fortune thread to look around. He saw the countless threads gathering. In the shape of a giant tree. Wasn't the entrance of the abyss supposed to lead to a place with 3 zones and 3 floors? Where am I right now? Percival started to make a mental map of Tartarus. He decided to call each inner world a layer. Layer 1 was where Percival was currently at. Layer 2 was where Sword Saint and others lived and perceived it to be the world of Tartarus. Layer 3 was where Percival's fate of fortune thread had landed. It was a subdimension within Layer 2, and a giant tree was situated in the center of the subdimension. Percival winced. Controlling the fate of fortune from so far was incredibly taxing. He had to concentrate hard to make sure the connection was not lost. Percival noticed some people's fate threads dangling like fruits on a branch. He saw around 40 or 50 such people. Their fate threads were connected to the giant mesh of fate threads that formed the tree. He counted 1,753 people. Their fate threads were connected to the giant mesh of fate threads that formed the tree. Are these the Grand Expedition members? The army of millions of Grand Expedition members was only 1,753 people in truth. The rest were the inhabitants, the illusion created by the nightmare. No, even those 1,753 might not be real people, and instead be just ghosts, puppets being forced to act as if they were alive. Percival continued to look around. He noticed a familiar fate of fortune thread. Olivia.